The story begins with the man suggested Chloe Verdeus to become his wife, and she, in response, pulled him to him. The girl agreed, saying that she wishes this more than anything, after which she enclosed a man in a kiss. Turning away from her lips, the man asked not to say that this is too much for her, and she would have to get used to it. Indeed, in the future, he's not going to stop there. Meanwhile, Chloe tried to understand how this happened. She remembered how she asked him whether to be rude at the first meeting, and he called her sensitive. Then he added that if he allows his emotions to prevail, he would only lose, not even having time to start. The girl retorted that she replied that she was not a soldier, and now she was not in war, unlike him. The man said that life is continuous battles, especially for people like her. Then Chloe vowed to herself. At that time, it seemed disgusting to her, and the man in front of her was like the devil in a human form. Clutching her dress tightly, she thought that nothing good would come out if she got confused with him in the future. At another time, she asked him if he thinks that every woman in the empire desperately wants to marry him. Then he decided to turn her theory of verification, but then the girl did not understand what he had in mind. She was determined not to play his hands, but fate and circumstances decided in a completely different way. Remembering the events of the past, she tried to understand how she could love such an arrogant man like him. At another moment, they sat in front of each other on their knees, while Chloe asked him to answer the question. The man asked what exactly she was interested in, what he heard the oncoming question to whether he loves her. At the moment, two girls were traveling in the carriage, one of whom asked Alice not to arrange any scenes this time. She replied that at the last dawn evening, it was simply incredibly boring. She could not do anything about it. Shrugging her shoulders, the girl said that she knew how to know that she was so intoxicated from several glasses of sherry. Then she added that she was sure that this time it would be much more fun. In response, Chloe only smiled weakly. Chloe, who was holding a cane in her hands, replied that she was sincere and cares about her sister very much. She really should curb her temper, because it is precisely because of him that she always falls into all kinds of troubles. This score is arranged by none other than the Duke of Tisa himself, and she needs to find a potential partner. Alice was well aware that the engagement is the only thing that could save their family from complete ruin. With a sigh, the girl added that she hoped to find a person, the feelings for which would be covered with her head. Clutching the cane tightly, Chloe replied that she was sorry, and she would help if her leg had not been in this state. She would really like her to have no need to lay such a heavy burden on her younger sister. Suddenly, Alice got up from her seat, after which she quickly moved to her sister, carefully when hugging her. Clutching her face to her, the girl asked what to regret her, because the most important thing is that she is nearby. After all, only a father is to blame, who, because of his mother, was outlined by his whole condition into medical accounts. 3 years ago, despite their difficult family circumstances, he allowed the army to use their castle. Let him be their father. However, she cannot say with confidence whether he is with a golden heart or simply a fool. And the rumors of the Duke of Tis do not say anything good. The young duke could not lead the soldiers to a great victory. There are rumors that he became the father of several illegitimate children from his mistresses, only in order to be executed. In addition, they say that he has a disgusting character, and he can completely crush, despite the title. It seems that many people think that it would be better if he had perished on the battlefield. Then there would be fewer problems. Chloe replied that given the situation, they were lucky that they were generally invited to such an event. Alice said that he is a person who should not be connected with, because he was surrounded by sinister rumors. They did not know his intentions, but she hopes that they would face him while they would enjoy the festival. However, they most likely have to greet him since he is the master, and there is nothing to do with it. Biting her lip, Chloe thought that she could not allow fear of the Duke to take upward. 3 years ago, Vinot Verdier joyfully opened the gate for the imperial army when it retreated. It was a winter day when Chloe was walking around the courtyard, slowly moving with the help of a cane. She heard the men said that the eldest daughter of Viscount is a cripple. They asked for additives. They were wondering how she could take care of someone in this state, and whether she would simply be a burden. Others asked to leave her alone, because the cripple simply wants to help the wounded, not to comprehend the same fate. Although they did not complain, because this girl is the existing pleasure for the eyes. Her father also heard it. A little later, The guy who lived with them said that his mercy asked her to leave the wounded in the care of the servants. Chloe understood everything, after which she crouched on the bed and sighed heavily, deciding that she was forcing her father to worry, but she still represents their pain, which makes them be on the verge. Since childhood, she was taught that the duty of a nobleman to help the weak. Suddenly, she heard a loud exclamation outside, because of which the girl shuddered and quickly headed for the window. One of the soldiers ordered everyone to greet the commander, after which everyone else immediately saluted him. The man said that earlier today he received news of the death of his father, Wilhelm von Tissa. He was beheaded by the enemy, who decided to hang his head at the walls of his castle. The soldiers immediately burst into tears. As a friend, the commander turned to one of the soldiers, menacingly asked if he wanted to return home. The guy hesitated, because of which the man decided that he did not want, but he replied that he wanted to go home. His wife recently gave birth to a child. While he was here, more than anything else, he wants to see them. Another soldier answered the same question, that he was very worried about his sick and lonely mother. The rest of the soldiers joined, confessing their reasons to return home as soon as possible and end the war. The commander said that there are many reasons why they are obliged to end this war and return home. The same applies to him. He could not pick up his father's body, not to mention the funeral. But they must remember that warriors are not worthy of God, which is why he refuses to retreat, and he wants to do everything to lead his soldiers to victory, and they have reasons to take victory. In the end, this is a matter of pride and dignity of the Tissa house, which he will defend the cost of his life. Demian said that now it depends on them to realize his despair and longing that they showed him into action. He instantly managed to raise the fighting spirit of the soldiers. He is a much more outstanding person than Chloe expected. The girl watched the soldiers loudly chase his name, being warmly with his excellent speech. Suddenly, Demian looked up, pointing him to the very window behind which the girl stood, and watched him. Chloe did not expect that she would be noticed, because of which she was scared and shuddered, thinking how to be. She looked so abruptly from the window that she dropped a plate on the floor, and she hid and covered her mouth with her hands. Then Chloe again looked out from the window, watching Demian headed for the joyful cries of the soldier. She thought that she could never do something like that after she heard about the death of her father. Then the girl began to pray, asking these soldiers to return home to their loved ones. At the same time, Demian hoped that their longing would bear fruit in the battle, bringing a great victory. The next morning, Chloe looked out from the door, noting that there was no one, and she should hurry and return. But at the same moment, she was stopped by a familiar male voice, because of which she froze in surprise, without turning around. When the guy came closer, she recognized Gilles in him, who looked at the girl with worriedly. Putting the cane incorrectly, Chloe stumbled and began to fall, but the guy managed to catch her at the same second. He asked where she goes so early, because only yesterday her father asked to stay in the room. With a smile on her face, the girl explained that she wanted to collect a few medicinal herbs for soldiers in the forest. Gilles said that he could do this for her, but last time he gathered poisonous herbs, scaring everyone. The guy was immediately embarrassed, to which Chloe said that she would be calmer if she collects them on her own. The concerned tone Gilles said that he could, but it is unsafe, and the air is now too cold. The girl replied that he had no reason for concern. She went somewhere many times on her own. After thinking a little, he agreed with her, calling to be careful, in response to which he received a sweet smile. Chloe suddenly remembered that when they first met, his head barely reached her shoulders. 20 minutes later, the girl gathered herbs, thinking that everyone was working hard, and she should also be useful. Suddenly, she heard the rustling near her, after which she looked out from behind the bushes, noticing Demian. She became very interested in what he was doing here at such an hour, because no one except her knows about this place. Something tells her that it would be better not to disturb him, and to leave as quieter as possible. But everything went not according to plan. Her cane caught on the foliage, creating a noise, and hearing this, the commander immediately asked, "Who is here?" Noticing how the girl dropped the basket, the man said in a displeased tone, "What is your name?" Chloe immediately blessed, apologizing to his lordship, hoping that he would not be angry with her. Putting her head in front of him, she named her name, clarifying that she was the eldest daughter of Viscount Verdier. Approaching her closely, The man said that he had noticed one interesting pattern since last night. He then stated that the eldest daughter of Viscount had the habit of spying on people like a small rat. Chloe apologized if she insulted him, but swore in the name that she had not done anything like this now. Crossing his arms over his chest, Demian, with a malicious smile, specified that she did not deny what she did yesterday. Then he asked if her father ordered her to attack him in order to seduce. This question immediately dumbfounded the girl. The man added that Lord Verdier is not as naive as it seems, simultaneously calling him ambitious small. Having lowered her head again, Chloe replied that everything was not at all as it seems, and her father has nothing to do with it. Demian asked why then to flaunt himself. He was vile, vile, filled with pus of the wound of his soldiers. Verdier's house occupies a low position, but such work did not bother the noblewoman like her. Looking at the man, she tried to understand whether this is really the same person she saw yesterday. Now his speeches sounded very rudely, but she replied that she was just trying to help those who went to war. She did not expect her title to become a problem, because the late mother taught not to look at her position. After all, as nobles, they are obliged to come to the rescue of those in need. It is precisely such behavior that they expect from a nobleman. Such words made Demian smile maliciously, after which he approached the girl even closer. He asked if it occurred to her to do something outside the abilities. Not only arrogant, but it also creates inconvenience for others. The last part of the question sounded quite tough and cold. If she only heard what obscene jokes a man told while she hobbled between them, would she continue to keep her head so high and speak about the behavior of a noblewoman? And if the Viscount accidentally heard, if in his place, he would chop off the head of anyone who dared to tarnish his daughter's name. These soldiers saw a dozen of their comrades killed in battle, but whether she knows what this is doing with a man. Moreover, it has not even completely dawned, and she already wanders through the forest with her foot, far from everyone. If something happened to her, who would be to blame? The man approached her almost closely. Chloe replied that this land became part of Verdier's possessions long before her birth, so it is safe here. The man grinned, but the girl again tried to assure him that it was absolutely safe here. Suddenly, he grabbed her cane, asked. She would still have this nonsense if he did it. Chloe was dumbfounded when the man literally grabbed the cane from her hand, which is why she lost her balance. At that very moment, Demian planted a cane directly into the body of the snake, which tried to quietly sneak up to them. Having pulled out the cane with force, the man said that there is always a danger in the forest, where not to turn. Then he added that she was reckless. If she thinks otherwise, these words made the girl think for a second. The cane was damaged, but the man returned it, saying that Chloe should be able to return to the castle. Thanking him, the girl said that it was not worth returning her, and she can return on her own. Grinning, Demian, I noticed that she could not occupy the temper, which was extremely unexpected for him. Then he lifted her dress, deciding to examine her leg, asking if this was hereditary injury. Chloe was struck by his tactlessness, after which she asked why he continues to behave so rudely. Rising, the man replied that she was too sensitive. He just asked a question, and she took it for a blow. If it allows your emotions to prevail, you can easily lose, so you need to try to restrain yourself. Chloe replied that she was not a soldier and not in the war, so she has the right to express her emotions as she wants. Demian said that life is continuous battles, especially for people like it, and you can't do anything here. However, this is not the reason to poke his nose in her life, but the man said that he only wanted to give her a little advice. Her unwillingness to thank him says that he touched her for the living, but this was even more angry with Chloe. The girl told his lordship that with all due respect to him, she would like to say two things regarding this. Firstly, this applies to the cane that he damaged. She needs to replace, which he must provide. Smiling, Demian replied that he would definitely talk to the carpenter as soon as he returned to the barracks. But the girl dissuaded him, explaining that she wanted a cane made of birches, that they are growing in the Duchy of Tis. The man narrowed his eyes, trying to understand what she had in mind, and Chloe said that she recalls his words. Yesterday, he loudly stated that he would return the winner from the war, so she decided that this was a great opportunity. In the end, one day he will return to the duchy, and she would like him to make her a new cane. At that very moment, the man touched her neck, asking that if he gave her something better than just a cane. After all, It seems that her father definitely wishes something more. But it brought the girl to the second point. If her father praised his daughters in his presence, it was solely because of his father's love. He just loves them and tries to learn everyone about their good qualities and how he cares about them. And although he loves his children, they are so torn off from life to forget that they will not be compared to Tis. He is not the only one who would prefer not to contact an inferior woman like all men. Having frowned, Demian invited her to save her self-abasement for the diary, but Chloe refused. When it comes to the truth, there can be no humiliation, and she would like to simply make clarity. He is free to pity her, but should not allow the idea that she is unhappy or that her life is like battles. The man asked if she was happy, living like that. Hearing this, the girl stopped, thinking about the question. He added that her life would never change, but she replied that she was completely satisfied, living a peaceful, unchanging life together, where she was born. Until the end of her days, this is her happiness. She poorly remembers how she returned to the castle after a collision with the Duke, but she remembers that she returned herself. All she knows is that the cold morning wind enveloped her all the way, like a snake that was in the forest. When Chloe was in her bed, Gilles said that the Duke of Tissa and his people had just left the castle. The reddened girl, with a sweet smile, thanked the guy for letting her know about it. A lot of time passed before she dared to return to that forest, and trying not to remember Demian. 3 years later, at present, Chloe and Alice arrived in the castle of Rose of the Tissa house at the invitation of the Duke. The girl could not believe that this castle is used only for the Duke's amusements for one season. Alice seemed simply ridiculous, but Chloe tried to ask her to behave more respectfully. The younger sister said she was already tired. At the same moment, she turned into a male voice, surprising her. She answered the smiling Lord Cormier that she was wonderful to see him again, in good health and a good mood. The guy asked if he could be so impudent to invite her to the next dance. She agreed. Smiling, Alice did not forget to imagine her older sister, who looked in surprise at Cormier. Chloe politely greeted. Having received an answer, he said that to meet with Alice's sister, this is an honor for him. He then stated that perhaps they could dance later, but at the same second, he noticed her cane. He became embarrassed, while Chloe said that the appearance of all these dancing couples in itself gives her pleasure. She let her sister let go, after which she watched her, and Lord circled in the dance for some time. It seems that everyone forgot about the stage at the ball that Alice arranged for the last time. The Lord seems to be a good party for her. She had not yet heard someone mention him in a negative way, and his intentions seemed sincere. The girl was glad, however. Does this mean that she should say the words of gratitude to the Duke of Tis? If possible, she would prefer to avoid him, but it would not be courteously, because they arrived at his invitation. But why on earth did he even invite them here? Perhaps due to the fact that their father ordered him help 3 years ago. She remembered his words when he said that doing something outside the possibilities, not only arrogant, he does not look like a person who appreciates kindness. She did not have a desire to give her to someone who did not want it. Chloe hoped that he had completely forgotten who she was. But at the same second, someone declared the appearance of the Duke. The man silently walked almost through the entire hall, purposefully walking to the place where Chloe was sitting. Hanging over her, the girl felt his gaze, but she did not find the strength to raise her head. After a couple of seconds, somehow got up from his seat. She was not sure the Duke, not looking into his eyes. Smiling, the man replied that a lot of time had passed since their last meeting, but he was glad to see her. He is in great duty to her father for his help 3 years ago, and now he would like to thank him personally. Then he thanked her that they accepted his invitation. She replied that it was the honor of being here. Looking at her cane, he slowly held out her hand to her. Then Chloe realized that the Duke had planned something. The man asked that if he was not too much asks for a lot, whether he could invite her to one dance. The guests immediately began to whisper, asking what was happening in his head of his lordship, and did he really not notice her cane? It must hardly have done something that caused the hostility of Tissa's house. They called her a poor thing. Meanwhile, Chloe brought her most sincere apologies, thinking that this man had not changed at all. Then she said with a smile that she was afraid that she was not skillful enough to be his dance partner. He asked if she refuses him the reason that too many men had already invited her, and he will have to wait. If this is not so, he hopes, she does not try to refuse him, because he really wanted to dance with her. Suddenly, a male voice was heard behind them, asking if he was tormenting the innocent young lady again. Johannes, the first prince of the kingdom, Svangan asked, does he not see that the poor girl was about to break? She has already rejected his proposal. It is not very frantically to continue to pester her with her desires. When asked if he had forgotten the manners, Damian replied that the invitation of a beautiful woman to dance is not a violation. Then he decided to assure him that she was not one of those who are able to easily burst into tears because of such an invitation. And this girl is much stronger than it might seem at first glance, although now it does not show it. Johannes looked at the Duke with surprise and distrust, sighing heavily, and not understanding what he was thinking about. Then the guy bowed, apologized on behalf of his cousin, as it was very rude on his part. Chloe replied that his grace was only concerned that she could remain an unclaimed flower. The prince was surprised by such an answer, after which he smiled and asked to take her apology, because this is not her fault. Then he stated that the young lady was very reasonable, after which he asked her name. She politely answered. Damian watched with dissatisfaction as the prince touched her shoulder, saying that he would like to meet with Viscount. He is intrigued by a man that he managed to grow such a beautiful daughter, so brave and unshakable. The girl bowed, apologized to His Highness, saying that she is here with her younger sister. Suddenly, she froze, realizing that, if you think about it, she had not seen Alice for a long time, and her gaze rushed towards the guests. But her sister was not visible, and it was not clear where she went. Johannes asked her to introduce him later, since he was now busy, but Damian understood something. Then the prince went to the Society of Beautiful Ladies, urging Damian, asking him to remove gloomy from his face. Chloe herself asked herself about what to do, and where Alice went disappeared so suddenly. She hoped that she was not stuck into trouble. At that moment the Duke approached her, asking where her sister was. The girl replied that the ballroom was so large that she could not see her, so she would go to look. Suddenly, the man grinned, touching her hand, and asking if she remembered their agreement. He clarified that we are talking about their small secret persuasion regarding her cane, which he promised her. Chloe asked him to let go of his hand if he was not going to give her a new one. He replied that she would receive her. Tearing a cane, Damian noticed that she had acquired a new one, and the girl thought that this person was unbearable. And he said that she was too desperately trying to find her sister to bicker this time with him. It would be not good if she was drunk again and felt bad, so he invited her to go with him. After all, as she said, the castle is extensive. Therefore, as its owner, he will lead it and will help to find Alice. Leaving the castle, the Duke asked if he was going too fast, but such a step was comfortable for Chloe. The man noticed that she practiced quite a lot to walk on her own. The girl nodded. Then he added that it should be terribly painful, but Chloe decided not to answer this comment. Grinkling, Damian looked at her, said that he saw. There is still a magnificent morale in her. The girl shook slightly when she thought that if she had not allowed him to pick up her cane. When they reached the garden, Damian noticed that the wind intensified, but it seemed that Chloe did not feel discomfort. Then he looked at the girl and asked who put these jewelry on her. She first did not understand the question. Having lowered her head, Chloe explained that she had done it herself. At that time, the Duke was closely watching her. Then he stated that this is not surprising, because this is a complete mess. In response to this, Chloe asked to return the cane. The Duke said that he was informed that a young girl was noticed, excitedly running in this direction, and he had the feeling that it could be her sister. From these words, Chloe loused and lowered her head. She mentally begged her sister not to get involved in trouble, when she suddenly froze in shock. Looking forward, Alice sat in front of her kneeling, kissing passionately, with some unfamiliar dark-skinned man, hugging him. The youngest, noticing his sister, began to break out, but the man did not let her go until Chloe looked at her in shock. Alice told the guy that he would be killed if they would catch him, but he replied that he would gladly part with her life next to her. When the younger sister called him Eddie, Chloe was dumbfounded, because she had already heard this name from Alice. She told me that once the other day at the village festival, she collided with an intriguing gypsy. He said that his name is Eddie, and the girl was burning with the hope of meeting him again, because she liked him. Then the girl realized that they had met each other all this time, but she did not know about it. At that very moment, Damian touched her shoulder, wondering if she was in order. Chloe did not answer immediately. After a small pause, she apologized to his luggage for what he had just to see. While the guy ran away, Alice ran to her sister, in a panic saying that Eddie appeared from nowhere. In a strict tone, Chloe ordered her sister to shut up. The youngest immediately shuddered, but immediately calmed down. The eldest again apologized to his lordship, after which she asked if she could leave for a second. Now she needed to send her sister away, and she would like to do it on her own, without extra eyes. The man answered in the affirmative, while Alice looked uneasily at her older sister. Chloe, in a strict voice, ordered Alice to immediately return to the carriage. The girl in a pink dress immediately hastened to fulfill the order of the elder, wanting to avoid punishment. Demian said that the name of the second daughter of Verdier would again be on everyone's mouths. These words made Chloe frown. He added that she has a real talent to become an epicenter of the scandal every time she appears in society. With trembling hands, squeezing the cane, the girl began to literally beg him not to tell anyone about it. The Duke asked how on earth he should be silent. His tone made Chloe strain and lower his head. She is well aware that no one would blame him if he had punished her family right now for a crime consisting in the fact that an outsider brought a stranger to his estate. Chloe thought that they were waiting for the destruction if she could not convince him to keep silence in any way. At that very moment, she dropped the cane and fell to her knees, hoping to pray a saving forgiveness from him. Putting her head in front of him, the girl said that it was all her fault, that she could not keep track of her stupid sister. She asked him to punish her instead of Alice, although she was not guilty of anything, but in this way she could save his family. The girl raised her head in shock when she heard the Duke's question. What would happen if he refuses what she would do? Looking at the man's grinning face, her heart began to pound furiously because she did not know how to be. She ordered herself to think, because you can't waste time, you need to come up with something for the sake of father and Alice. Chloe did not come up with anything better than starting to flatter the Duke, praising his heroic feats. After hearing her carefully, Demian asked to continue his flattering speeches that he liked. Chloe continued, saying that one day he said that he would do everything to lead his soldiers to victory. It was at this time that the lord of the remote castle boiled the gates to his soldiers and provided them with hospitality. Demian asked what she wanted him to return the debt, because this is the custom of the noble house of Tissa. The girl replied that she asks him to show a little generosity to her modest family for past services. He asked that he had not repaid what, that he invited her and Alice to the society of the most respected families in the kingdom. He should blame his own sister for the fact that she trampled this opportunity, thereby substituting her. Chloe again called him, but he humbled her with an angry look, after which she clutched her hands at his feet. In an irritated tone, he asked what she was doing. The girl, threw it in pride, asked him to merge. If he could have mercy on them this time, she will do everything he wishes, and never forget. She was desperate, but at the same moment, the man lifted her a chin, asking why she was doing this. He asked where the noblewoman went, who held her head high, showing her pride. And now she clings to his legs and flows, which will do anything for him, like some kind of slave. Looking into her eyes full of despair, the Duke said that this is not to her face, so she should stop doing this. Demian realized that the reason she begs him on her knees is her sister's fast marriage. The only hope of saving the position of their family is the marriage of Chloe or Alice with a very rich nobleman. Touching her cheeks, he asked what about Chloe's life, whether she spit on her, because she seemed to be completely desperate. The girl answered negatively, explaining that happiness for her. You see people dear to her, surrounded by care. Then the man asked if she was ready to do everything for this. Chloe replied that if it was in her power, then yes. He replied that he would think what she could do for him in return until she can return to the estate. The girl replied that she would be happy, but His Highness personally asked Alice to present him. Suddenly, Demian threateningly stated that it was better not to try to attract the attention of Johannes or another man. After all, if she does differently, he will have to kill her and her whole family with his own hands without sparing anyone. Then he ran a finger over her lip, saying that his generosity also had limits, and she should understand this. And also, he advised to refrain from visiting this place with people whom she does not trust. After all, this garden is often visited by lovers who come here to be given physical passion. If only she does not expect that rumors will be blocked about them. But the girl was now worried about a completely different one. When Demian left her, Chloe remained on her knees, and her hands trembled while she was thinking about this bastard. After 3 months, Chloe wrote a letter to the Duke, with the hope that the letter would find him in good health. A lot of time has passed since its return from the exquisite city of Svan, where the air is saturated with the smell of roses. There is talk of marriage between her sister Alice and a gentleman, whom she met at the ball that day. Their family is incredibly happy about this, since he is a noble man of high moral principles. She is well aware that this is the fruit of his generosity. At that time, she thought for a long time about how to pay him. At that very moment, the feather of the girl stopped, and she could not add what she had come to in the end. Reading the letter, Chloe noticed that this seemed somewhat superfluous, but she was still not sure. Suddenly, the door opened, and Gilles entered the room, saying that he had brought her a little snacks and tea. The girl thanked him, after which she hurriedly asked about how Alice was doing now. He replied that she went out for a while, but since then she did not leave the room. She also refuses food. Chloe decided to clarify whether she met more with the gypsy that was so arrogant in relation to her. Gilles, that Alice has matured from that time. Chloe added that she soon had an engagement with Count Cormier. The Count is a good man and occupies a high position in society, which will positively affect their family. She knows that Alice will be happy with him. In the end, he will be better than some kind of tramp. At that very moment, the guy said that if Lady Alice gets married, then she will have to be very difficult without her. Chloe was surprised to ask if he'd to worry about her, to which she received the answer that this was not his business at all. Contrary to his nervousness, Chloe smiled sweetly, the defendant, that this would not happen, because she still has him. Then she thanked him for anxiety, because of which the guy blushed and turned away, clearly embarrassed. Chloe invited him to look at the letter that she writes to the Duke, but it seems to her that something is missing. He is quite irritable, therefore, regardless of what she writes, he will find flaws in any way. Gilles replied that if he has such a bad character, he would be no less angry if he does not receive a letter. Suddenly, a loud clat was heard outside the door, after which the door opened loudly, and the Viscount went inside. Smiling, the man asked his daughter to prepare right now. It was clear that he had received good news. The head of the family announced that the Duke of Tissa was going to their estate for hunting. Chloe was stunned. She knew that in their forests, full of wild animals, and now her hands were shaking from the realization of the situation. Viscount said that he had learned about it recently, and it seems that he would arrive earlier than expected. Given his passion for hunting, it is not surprising that he is in a hurry here, but this was not very happy about the girl. After a couple of hours, the Duke met the head of the family, saying that taking him here is a great honor for them. The man hoped that the hot heat did not tire him too much, after which he began to ask how he lived. At this time, Demian carefully examined the interior, said that they had much fewer servants than before. Viscount wanted to answer something, when Chloe suddenly came forward, saying that they had received news too late. However, they will do everything possible to make his stay here as comfortable as possible. At that very moment, the Duke's face was replaced by a smile when he stated that he had remembered her words that he had heard earlier. He quoted that a nobleman who does not know the concept of hospitality does not deserve his title. When they sat down at the table, the Viscount said that Alice does not matter, so he would not be present. Demian replied that he hopes that there was nothing serious with her. His father thanked him for anxiety. Then the Duke stated that he was very grateful for the magnificent meal that they had prepared for them. Viscount apologized, because they should occupy them, to which he received an answer that he was only a pleasure. Then he said that he was sorry, because it seems that the dish did not like Lady Chloe, which did not touch food. She replied that the heat affected appetite. Demian replied that she was useful to increase the weather resistance. Viscount replied that his daughter was a little nervous because of his presence, but she loves the forest very much. The Duke suggested that she knows the area well, to which he received a proud and affirmative answer. Viscount said that it would not be an exaggeration to say that the forest leading to the mountains is its personal garden. He remembered the case when she seriously fell ill, returning from a walk, but continued to go to the forest. The Duke looked in surprise at Chloe, who continued to be silent, giving the floor to his father. He added that it was about the same time when they and their soldiers stopped at their castle. At the same moment, Gilles approached the girl, asking if everything is in order. Now she does not look like that now. The girl replied that everything was fine with her, after which she thanked for the water, smiling at the guy simultaneously. Looking at her, Damien said that if she loves the forest so much, then he would like to ask her escort. The worried father immediately replied that Chloe would only interfere with him if he allows. You can find another. However, he did not have time to finish. The Duke stated that he wanted to hear her opinion, hoping for an affirmative answer. Having squeezed her dress, Chloe thought that he already knew, and there is only one answer to his question. The girl replied that if he allowed her servants to introduce a horse, then she would gladly accompany him. But contrary to her expectations, the Duke gave a negative answer that she, his lady, would go with him on his horse. After all, as she understands, he is not used to following others, so he is ready to take responsibility. A little later, the girl came up with a hunting uniform, after which she went out into the street, waiting for the Duke. The man went to her horse, moving back, and with a smile calling her to join. Chloe asked herself whether it was safe, because she made unhurried walks on horseback, but did not hunt. In addition, she could not fully trust this man who, as luck would have it, tried to hurry her. The girl handed her cane to Gilles, to which she heard the question whether everything would be in order with her. Chloe tried to convince him that everything would be fine, while the Duke looked at them displeasedly. Having moved away, Damien noticed that she and her accompanying person were quite close. She called his name. Chloe explained that he was with their family since his youth. They were inseparable, as much as he remembers. At the time when other servants left due to the salary of the no paid, he preferred to stay with them. For her family, Gilles is much larger than just a servant. Now he is practically a family member. Hearing this, Damien suddenly and without warning made the horse go to the gallop, dumbfounding the girl. Leaning toward the frightened Chloe, the man with a smile asked which way to run, left or right. She stuttered because she was frightened, but the Duke hurried her with an answer. She screamed that they needed to the left. After a couple of minutes, which were infinity for the girl, they began to stop slowly. The Duke noticed that the dog seemed to be caught by a deer, moreover, quite large, so that there was a great success. However, Chloe did not listen to him, mentally asking himself if he did it intentionally to torment her. Suddenly, the man closed her eyes with his hand, urging her to breathe deeper and more even, as he felt her fright. But then he turned her head to him, trying to reassure her, saying that now everything ended and everything would be fine. When they returned, Chloe said that she would send after the doctor. As soon as the dawn, the Viscount asked what happened. The girl replied that the Duke was injured during the hunt. An animal attacked him, so that his wound needs to be examined. When asked whether he was injured, Damien replied that he was wounded when he rushed in pursuit of walking. At that very moment, the worried head of the family said that if it was a small wound, Chloe could sew it. At that moment, Alice said a voice, saying that on his misfortune, they did not have anesthetic at hand. Therefore, he will have to endure the pain, since the inhabitants of the village are getting sick every day from food poisoning. Chloe tried to assure his lordship that the doctor would have coped much better with suturing the wound than she. Alice added that only one doctor is engaged in them, and they should not assign him to sole use. Damien replied that he did not want to take away such a valuable resource from people of their possessions, because he is just a guest. With a cute smile, the man asked if Chloe would consider it a difficulty to look into his room after dinner. The girl replied that it would be wiser to send for a more competent person than to trust such a job. Viscount added that she was right, after which he asked to allow him to send for a doctor right now. Damien replied that a few years ago, the appearance of Chloe, caring for the wounded, made an impression on him. He believed that his daughter would cope perfectly. The head of the family shone when he realized that the Duke remembered this. Damien said that he did not dare to forget a single detail about the events that happened to him on these lands. After dinner, Chloe looked into his room, hearing that she was like a prisoner who was led to a gallows. Reading the book, the Duke added that a simple request should not inspire such horror that he saw in it. Ignoring his words, the girl went up to him, in an infantil tone, asking him to show his wound. When asked why she herself should not be examined, she replied that, in this case, he should roll up his sleeve. The Duke said that she was capable of a lot. She replied that she, unmarried, did not stake to touch a man. The man said that it was old-fashioned on her part, after which he began to stretch the shirt. When he took it off, he threw it to the floor, saying that it would be difficult for her, but it would be better if she had not stared. The dumbfounded and reddened girl immediately thought that she had never told him to take off his shirt. However, she tried to pull herself together, after which she began to wipe the wound with alcohol to disinfect. Chloe said that it might hurt, but the Duke replied that she wanted her to make him suffer. Then he remembered how she said that her mentor was a doctor. It should be useful in such cases. She really found out about medicine from him, but in a completely different direction than what she used now. The man immediately wondered what kind of direction it was, to which the girl was embarrassedly replied that it was embroidery. Demian laughed, saying that this is the first time in his life when he regards the embroidery as something useful. Suddenly, he asked if her sister still arranged secret rendezvous after the onset of darkness. Chloe was stunned, asking him to refrain from talking and be as motionless as possible. However, he demanded an answer. Chloe said that from that night, she realized the fallacy of her path that she chose, and thanks to his lordship, they talk about the marriage between her and the Count of Cormier, and she is very grateful to the Duke. If he knew that, for his silence, he would be rewarded, but that she had not communicated with him for 3 months. He would never have such mercy, after which the Duke brought his face to a dumbfounded girl. Chloe was worried and shuddered, saying that he was too close, but he demanded the answer to the question. Her heart began to beat faster when she said that she wrote letters to him, but he did not receive a single one. She said that she could not force herself to send them. The Duke stated that her attempts to lie down were disappointed. The man asked him to tell him the truth. Chloe pushed him away, saying that all because he hates her. She is well aware of what unbearably repulsive he finds her, which is why she was so hem-patted. Then she apologized, feverishly saying that she ended with what she came for, and now she would leave him. Rising from her seat, she took a tray of medicines, clumsy leaving Demian's bed. Suddenly, she entered his shirt, after which she slipped, dropping the tray and flying down. The Duke barely managed to catch her, not allowing her to fall to the floor, while the medicine scattered on the floor. With a sharp movement, the man laid the girl on the bed, hanging over her and looking straight into the eyes. Looking at his hand, Chloe said that his wound opened again, but he did not pay attention to it. Then he said that she could always sew again, to which he heard a question from the girl, what he wants from her. Taking a strand of her hair and breathing in the aroma, the man replied that she already knows the answer to this question. Turning away her head, Chloe glanced at the guy. She said, "She is here only at the request of her father." Demian smiled, asking if she thinks that this is all that he wants. He said similar 3 years ago. She understands why he questioned the intention of people, because he learned not to trust others on the battlefield. However, the thoughts that every woman in the kingdom desperately wants to marry him is a selfish error. The man was surprised by such a statement, and however, after a couple of seconds, he laughed, which surprised Chloe. Continuing to laugh, the Duke agreed with her, after which he asked how to verify her theory in practice. Then he stated that she could go, because she did why she came, but did not say that it was he who wanted to check. A few minutes later, the girl returned to her room, panting, trying to digest this meeting. She asked herself why she only tormented herself with the question of how to thank such a terrible person. Having picked up the gloves that she did herself, Chloe decided that it would be foolish to give him this on her part. She did not notice how she began to boil slowly, thinking that for him it was necessary to use the needle thicker. Chloe decided that it was impossible to allow emotions to take the upper hand, because thanks to him, Alice met the Count. Looking out the window, she thought that when Alice would get married and things would go in the way, everything would be all right. The next morning, Alice turned to her sister in shock, asking if she was sure that the Duke had not damaged her head. The Viscount was also shocked. I turned to his lordship, and saying that he did not quite hear him, Demian repeated slowly, stretching the syllables that he was offering his daughter's marriage. Lady Alice Verdier. Father laughed, and then replied that there was already talking about marriage between his daughter and Count Cormier. In a completely calm tone, the Duke replied that this fact did not change his desire to offer her a hand and heart, and it seems that he is not good enough for them, since they continue to make inappropriate remarks. After that, an ominous silence came, during which no one found what to say for it. The Viscount tried to defuse the situation, saying that that was not the point. The contract was simply concluded, but, regardless of his opinion, he must respect his daughter's desire. But this also did not please Alice. Having risen from his seat, the Duke said that this was necessary, so he gave them 3 days to think. He then said that he himself would stop at his estate nearby, so that their answer would come as soon as possible. Then he smiled, saying that he was very hoping that they would carefully consider his generous sentence. A few minutes later, Alice was already sobbing in her room, shouting that she never wanted to be a duchess. She is well aware of what an opportunity it is for their family, but all this is too unexpected for her. Looking at her sobbing sister, Chloe thought about what the hell is, Demian thinks, and why she was doing this. Remembering his last words yesterday, she said that Alice was not obliged to agree if she does not want it. Realizing that this does not work, the girl added that she was sure to talk with her father. Alice turned to her. Having jumped out of his seat, the youngest immediately put her sister in a hug, thereby thanks to her. Alice asked, suddenly something would go wrong, and she will not be able to get married. What will happen to them then? After all, when the Duke made an offer, this will undoubtedly put an end to their relationship with Count Cormier. And if she refuses him, he will definitely get angry. Chloe asked her not to cry, saying that everything would be fine. Some time will pass, and she will receive a lot of proposals about marriage, but now she needs to tolerate a little more. Suddenly, Alice said that she was in love with Eddie. A surprised sister immediately wanted to answer her about this. But before she had time to say anything, the younger sister stated that she was wearing his child, which was dumbfounded by Chloe. Alice looked into her sister's eyes with a tearful and bewildered look, asking what to do now. Really, this happened due to the fact that they laid on her such an excessive time that Chloe could not take. If this is the price that they must pay for their egoism, in this case, you need to interfere with this marriage. This must be done at all costs, because her sister's happiness was more important than satisfying the whim of the Duke. Then the girl decided that first she needed to convince her father, and after deciding what to do next. As soon as the sun came out, Chloe went to the office of his father, who was surprised that his daughter woke up so early. Then he asked what brought her early in the morning. She replied that she wanted to talk with him about the marriage of Alice. She wanted to say something else, but the man abruptly interrupted her, saying that he was also considering it all night. With sadness in his head sadly, he said that the very prospect of the marriage of Alice is ambiguous for him. This news pleases him, but at the same time worries. Chloe tried to find out what exactly he wants to say. Viscount explained that Tissa's house is a family that appreciates nobility and always acts with dignity and proudly. They would never have expelled Alice away, even if they found her character or inappropriate behavior. The Duke of Tissé certainly knows what cruel fate awaits the divorced woman in this kingdom. Putting a cup on a saucer, Chloe interrupted him in a serious tone, saying that she should tell him something. The head of the family immediately strained, after which he asked what it was. The girl was already ready to inform him of everything, but at the same moment the door opened, and Gilles flew into the room, loudly demanding the attention of the lord and the lady. Then he shouted that Alice was gone. This news caused indescribable shock on the faces of Viscount and Chloe. Having run up to him, the head of the family asked what he was talking about. He could not believe that his daughter simply disappeared. In response to this, the guy handed him a letter that he found in her room. The man immediately took him away. Gilles did not bake, silently allowing a worried man to read a letter from his own daughter. In him, Alice wrote to her beloved father and a dearest sister. She grew observing the love of her parents. She knew, thanks to him, that true love can overcome both the disease and the death itself, because they are a living proof of the power of love. But she no longer intends to ignore the aspirations of her heart, and she also wants to stay with her head raised for her child, which now wears in her womb. She decided to prove to herself that there was no forbidden love, and renounce Verdieu on behalf of. She apologizes to her father, asking him not to forgive him for such a selfish act, although she is very sorry. She also added that she hopes that one day she had a chance to make amends for them. When the head of the family finished reading the letter, he immediately staggered and collapsed, and could not read to the end. At the end, Alice wrote that she was an ungrateful daughter, but sincerely says that she loves them, albeit with a heavy heart. When the sun began to go beyond the horizon, Chloe sat near the bed of her father, following his condition. A few minutes later, the man opened his eyes, turning to the eldest daughter, asking if she knew. The girl replied that she vaguely guessed that there was a man, not indifferent to Alice, but was not sure. The fact that she did not notify him says that she did not approve of him, and he is an unusual scum. Chloe said that if Alice escaped with him, despite her objections, he must be a worthy man. She trusted her sister, assuring her father that everything would be fine, simultaneously asking him to focus on recovery. Then she smiled, adding that the Duke of Tissa is regarding. This can be given to her, she will talk to him. When she left the room, she immediately met Gilles, asking if he intended to leave. She understood this from the moment he brought her letter, because he would never go into her room without permission. The guy replied that it makes no sense to hide it from her, but the girl was now far from interested. He decided that Chloe would be in anger, but on the contrary, she thanked him for being next to her. She herself was not sure what to do, but thanks to him, everything somehow happened by itself. That is why she is grateful to him for helping her to escape, thereby solving several personal problems. What was done is done. They should courageously transfer the misfortune that befell them, and let Alice let them go. The excited Gilles wanted to reach out to her, but refrained, saying that he hoped that she did not blame herself, and she should not take responsibility for this, because if she does this, he does not know how to live with it. Chloe replied that she was the only person who at this moment is able to look after Verdier's house, and therefore, at all costs, she will find a way to survive, since she does not want the fall of her own family, even if this means making a very dangerous choice that entail ambiguous consequences. 3 days later, Chloe decided to independently pay a visit to Demien's estate, which was a surprise to him. He asked if his proposal to marry so pleasant that she decided to personally notify his decision. She replied that this could not be discussed in the letter. Then she heard the question whether she suffers from an infectious disease. Hearing a negative answer, the man said that if this is not so, then she could approach him a little closer. Smiling, he asked to approach and sit next to him, but the girl at first hesitated, wanting to be away. The Duke asked if she would ignore his order. Not having the opportunity to refuse, Chloe plopped down nearby. Then he stated that his wound was not dragging on. The girl asked if he called a doctor, but he answered negatively. Pointing to the suitcase with medicines, the Duke asked if she would help to apply the ointment, but she decided to quarrel. The man replied that he could easily say, and what she was thinking now only to look at her displeased face. With a sighing heavily, Chloe took a bottle of ointment, said that he was deeply mistaken about what she was thinking. Sultry weather does not contribute to healing. It will be better for him to be in the room as much as possible. Finding outside the estate will only complicate the process, and summer in the Tissa's family estate is not as pleasant as here. Suddenly, the man added that he likes the feeling of paired skin from head to toe. It was embarrassed by Chloe. The girl said that he could remove his hand, and the man asked why his proposal was rejected. She replied that now marriage is impossible physically for her sister, after which she heard the question of what the reason was. Nervously squeezing the dress, Chloe asked if she could ask a question before she reveals the whole truth to him. Having received permission, the girl asked if she was the reason for which he wanted to marry her sister. She looked carefully at the Duke, waiting for an answer. That was curious why she decided so. Chloe decided to clarify that she was asking about his intention to enter her family in order to completely destroy her life. In response, she heard only a laugh, after which Demien asked if she remembered that she had told him not so long ago. The thoughts that every woman in the kingdom desperately wants to marry him is a selfish error. He would say that it was she, Lady Chloe, is fixed on herself on the verge of ignorance, if he can think about something like that. These words made the girl startle. Only the man continued to sew on her, asking logical questions. Is it true that she believes that he will marry the daughter of an inconspicuous and mired in Viscount's debt to lime her? Chloe decided that it was unlikely, to which she received an answer that at times she is surprisingly funny. By ignoring this phrase, she asked if it was that he was in love with Alice and really wants to marry. With a sigh, the Duke asked if he looked like a romance that believes that marriage should be based on love. There is only one explanation of why he made an offer to her sister. Demien also became interesting. Chloe said that there should be a significant reason for marriage to the daughter of Verdier's house, which he cannot reveal. If there is a justification why he should refuse marriage to the most enviable lady of the kingdom, then this is already strange. Given that he does it for the sake of his daughter, from the family of low status, then he probably does not care about who to marry. So, he can prefer to marry a woman with such a noticeable flaw that no one will look at her twice. Demian asked. It could be a woman who lost the opportunity to use one foot. Chloe replied that if she had lost both legs, perhaps she would become even more perfect bride for him. At that very moment, the Duke slowly approached her, after which he kissed her lips, which unlawfully surprised the girl. When the kiss was interrupted, the girl grabbed the man by the hand, but he did not want to interrupt such a pleasant moment. Turning away, she asked what he was doing, to which she heard the answer, that she wanted to know how sharp her language could be. This is a wonderful opportunity to find out if she can conceive him the heir, after which he kissed her on the neck. The next second, a loud slap sounded, and the Duke's cheek immediately blushed from a strong blow to Chloe's palm. Then she stated that this was done when he had not yet responded to her proposal. Egregious disrespect. Licking your lip, Demian, you replied that this is a truly suitable rebuff that she could give him. Having risen, he added that he advises her to familiarize himself with the principles of negotiations. Fastening his shirt, he released a girl who did not take his nervous look from him, not believing that it was over. A few days later, the girl sat at her workplace, passing by the ears of the news and speech of Gilles. Unconsciously, she touched in her lips, recalling the kiss of the Duke, who became very unexpected for her. Suddenly, from his thoughts, he pulled out the guy's voice, forcing the girl to startle, and with surprise to look at him. The worried Gilles asked if everything was in order with her, noting that she looks very pale and unhealthy. With a sigh, Chloe asked what they stopped at. He replied that they sent a congratulatory message. And after that, the royal family, having learned about the engagement, continued to send Lady Alice's incredible bunch of gifts. Then the guy apologized, with awkwardness in his voice, asking if her negotiations with the Duke were unsuccessful. Chloe thought whether her guess was true, because Prince Johannes was an official heir to the royal throne. But there is a person whose power is not inferior to the royal family, and who enjoys popular respect. The royal family was delighted with the fact that the Duke to marry the daughter of a simple viscount, instead of a noblewoman. The Duke of Tissa himself is well aware of everything, when suddenly a servant entered the room, heading straight to Chloe. Loof bowed low. He informed Milady that he arrived at the guest. She was surprised, because she was not waiting for anyone at that time. The butler specified that the Duke of Tissa arrived, after which he asked whether he should inform the master of this. The girl replied that he should not bother him. She would meet the Duke on his face, and he would wait for the living room. With a confident look, Chloe said that he would immediately put herself in order and will certainly meet him there. At that very moment, he and Gilles went to the bedroom, when suddenly they heard that Demian said that he had already been waiting. A man dressed in an official suit smiled broadly, saying that she was surprised to see him here. The girl answered in a displeased tone that the upper decency to enter the lady's empty bedroom without an invitation. The Duke said that he could not do anything with himself, but Chloe said that this was her personal space. Approaching her and extending his hand, the man asked if it was really so necessary. Gilles was soberly watching him. Demian added that their relationship will soon cross that line when they do not need solitude from each other. The guy who stood next to them was literally stunned by his speeches, not understanding what the Duke is talking about now. Suddenly, Demian looked menacingly at him, rudely ordering to close the door. Gilles did not have the opportunity to refuse. Closing the door behind them, the guy clutched the pen for some time, trying to understand what was happening between them. Opening the box, the Duke said that these jewelry was passed down from generation to generation in the Tissa house. If they followed the traditions, it was his mother who had to present them to her, but she did not approve of this marriage. Having lowered her head, Chloe replied that this was expected, and she understands everything. Demian was surprised at her dull reaction. Putting the cup, he asked a little irritably that she was only pretending to be calm, or she really doesn't care. Chloe only looked at him, saying that she was afraid to react too hastily, because she does not know what he would say. Then she asked if this means that he accepts her offer. Before answering, the man smiled. Having answered in the affirmative, he handed her jewelry, asking him to regard this as an offer of a hand and heart. The Duke addressed her officially, solemnly asking if she agreed to become his wife and Duchess. Chloe lowered her head, then barely audible, said that she was sincerely grateful that he decided to accept her offer. The Duke was surprised at her gratitude, and, I continued to hold the jewelry in her hand, asked how she would prove it. She replied that she would do everything in her power to help him in every undertaking for which he would take. Regardless of what she could be, she will do this, to which she heard the question, which, in her opinion, he wishes. The man asked if he should again lead his tongue along her dry lips to force his mouth to open. She suggested that his desire is power, although it is not far, cited to know exactly what he was thinking about. With a serious expression on the face, Damien said that from this moment, she was forbidden to say such things. He knew that short-sightedness was not about her, although he knew that she would do everything in her power to help him. Chloe added that if he wants to divorce in the future, she will gladly satisfy his request. In a calm tone, the man asked if she offered him a divorce even before they got married. The Duke seemed too arrogant, and its arrogance at the moment makes him furious. Damien decided to ask directly what was precisely her intentions and what she hopes to get from him. Clutching the dress tightly, Chloe, with a confident look, stated that she wanted to become a duchess and save her family. At that very moment, the man went to her from behind, after which, with a smile on his face, put on a family jewelry. When asked what it feels like to wear the jewelry of Tiss's house, the girl replied that they were rather heavy. But this is nothing compared to the load of responsibility that she will have to bear as the wife of the Duke. Then he again asked if she still wanted to be his wife. She replied that she wishes this more than anything else. Then he touched her chin, asking if she carefully studied the issue of negotiations. Bringing his face to her, he asked how she thinks what he wants from her at the moment. A sudden girl grabbed the Duke by the tie, after which she pulled to her and endowed her passionate kiss. When the kiss was interrupted, the man asked if it was too much for her, but she replied that she did not want to lie. Damien said that she would have to get used to, because in the future, he is not going to stop there. After a while, the Viscount was dumbfounded by this news, while Damien said that she would become a good duchess. Father replied that his daughter was a prudent young lady, and is sure that she would gain universal respect. If he simply manages to make her happy, then he will willingly offer him everything that he has, including his life. Suddenly, the girl drew attention to his hand, noticing the glove that she sewed him, but could not give it. Meanwhile, Damien asked if he would give him the forest on the territory of the estate and mountains that lead to him. The Viscount was surprised, as this soil is almost barren, and it is difficult to find yew trees. The Duke explained that these are the lands revered by Lady Chloe, and it was there that everything originated between them. After 2 weeks, they held the ceremony. The priest asked if he was always swearing to be next to his wife, and to fulfill your duty despite all the trials and hardships that will be prepared by him in the future. Damien agreed, after which they announced that the bride and groom could kiss to fix their union. At that very moment, the man kissed her on the cheek. The Viscount, looking at them, flooded with tears, saying that his dear daughter today looks just great. Gilles, who was also among the guests, looked at Chloe, not understanding why she decided to get married. After their small kiss, the clergyman said that he declared them husband and wife. At that very moment, Damien called her, and sharply raised her in his arms, because of which the girl dropped a bouquet from fright. Listening to the words of congratulations, Chloe embarrassedly asked the newly made husband to put her on the ground. The man asked if she intends to tighten it, after which he reached out to her for a new kiss. After a couple of seconds, the girl decided not to resist, after which she grabbed his neck, receiving praise. After a while, people said that the Duke left Verdier's estate immediately, as soon as the ceremony ended. He rushed, without even spending a wedding night with his wife, and the Duchess would spend 3 months completely loneliness. Others asked if they poured this part from the Red Vuil, a local newspaper that wrote about this. They wrote there that even a marriage could not extinguish the ardent passion of the Duke, who was seen with the Marquise Isabella. Chloe also noticed this article, carefully looking at the woman who was in the photo next to Damien. One of the tailors said that it would burn it immediately, but the girl replied that this was not necessary. The burning of pieces of paper will not turn rumors into ashes, and this action will not change anything and will not explain whether it is true. Chloe decided to leave if she finished taking measurements, but they still need to discuss the material and design. The girl replied that she puts it at her discretion because she was aware of better than her. The employee bowed, watching the lady limping, headed for the exit, where Gilles met her. Looking at the article, the woman said that men and their ability to control themselves would destroy this country. When Chloe sat in the carriage, the guy asked why she temporarily not entrusted the control of the estate to others. He can also take care of the business on her behalf. But he was refused. The girl explained that everything was in order. Gilles was cautiously in his voice that she could attract undesirable attention due to the article in the Red Veil. She replied that if people see that the Duchess allows rumors to hurt themselves, this would give rise to more anxiety. She remembered how Demian, after the ceremony, riding a horse, said that now he was returning to the capital. And as for her, from this moment she can fulfill her direct duties of the Duchess. Over the past 3 months, he did not answer her letters, which served as a reason for many questions. However, the main reason could be the Marquise of Isabella, although Chloe did not expect anything from this marriage. Squeezing the skirt of the dress, the girl concluded that there is no reason to allow this to influence herself, all the more unreasonable. The guy first was nothing but this did not answer, glancing at the mistress, realizing that this news was reflected on her. Then he called out to her, saying that she was waiting for good news upon arrival in the mansion. It interested her. Gilles announced that the letter had arrived from Lady Alice. It is small, but it seems to be in good health. A smile immediately appeared on the girl's face when she asked why he did not tell her about it before. She really wanted to get a letter from Alice. The guy asked if she was so happy. She answered in the affirmative. Now she knows that Alice is in complete safety, and her father's health has been noticeably improved recently. Her wedding also inspired people in their possessions. Moreover, in any case, she would prefer to live separately. If only there were an opportunity to live forever, she would give a lot to continue. As she already mentioned in her previous letters, thanks to his lordship in the Verdier estate, everything is fine. She hopes that the case, because of which he hastily left, will soon be settled, and she will write to him again. Demian carefully read the letter of his wife, in which nothing important was said, only concern. When he noticed that the girl signed up the name of Verdier, he was surprised, because she was going to take his last name. Then he drew attention to the newspaper, which announced that even the marriage could not extinguish the ardent passion of the Duke. Although he recently married, several people saw him entertaining with the Marquise Isabella herself. Taking the newspaper in his hands, the man said that Chloe probably saw this, but not in a word was updated in a letter. Then he asked that she felt at the same time whether she prolonged her tears with shame, but she probably restrained them. The newspaper said that the Duke's secret novel during the honeymoon only strengthened the position of the prince. Meanwhile, rumors about the deterioration of the king's state continued to spread throughout the kingdom. Having finished reading, Demian said that they wrote exactly what he ordered them, and everything went according to plan. He remembered the words of Chloe, who said that his desire was power, and she would do everything to help him. Whenever he thinks about her, he is covered by a sudden desire to grab something to calm the anger. Since he saw her, she acted on his nerves. He was annoyed to see her helping among those in need. Although she herself could easily go for one of them, a strange feeling in her form grew, leaving a sour taste. Demian still does not know how to relate to this, but I am sure that no girl is capable of this. Looking at his gloves, he said that the next time he would have to lock her in the room and force her to sew for days. And when her fabric ends, he will make her embroider on herself, no matter how cruel it sounds. But he wishes it. The next day, the Duke was in the chambers of the king, who said that the Lord would soon take him to him. Coughing heavily, he also hoped that the Duke would serve Johannes well even after his death. The king was sure that Demian was notified that the prince was not entirely out of his mind, that he was a little aggravated by the situation. However, now he had to swear before God that he would be devoted to him and could help the king in difficult times. The Duke replied that he promises, but only if he became a king worthy of his devotion. This surprised the old man. The man tried to increase his voice that this was the obligation of the subject, to serve the king, regardless of his decision. In a calm tone, Demian replied that then it is quite obvious that this country awaits in the future with such a king. It will be the one who, unnoticed by everyone, has become crazy. But he decided to take the last words back. He is aware of his madness, as well as the king, and those who died from his hands, even though they did not commit anything terrible. There were many rumors that one body after another was pulled out of his chambers, but the people will learn about it very soon. Then he grabbed the king by the hand, said that he risked his life on the battlefield only for the sake of this kingdom. He is always ready to fight for his country, and is it wrong for the throne to the one who worthy? The king was dumbfounded, after which he began to cough, asking loudly what he dares to hint, standing in front of him. Demian replied that now the madness of Johans is kept secret, but sooner or later everything secret becomes clear. In a hoarse voice, the old man asked, since he had such greedy ambitions that had not previously manifested. In response to this, the Duke stated that they began to manifest from the moment he was born, but no one knew about it. Closer to the sunset, Chloe was in the family library, sitting on an armchair and counting the book, languidly flipping through the pages. But no matter how much she tried to concentrate, her images of the Duke Tissa and the Marquise of Isabella had the images of the Duke of Tissays before her eyes. She thought that she needed to read this article more carefully, but after a second, she decided to forget about it. At that very moment, a creak of the door was heard, and a smiling father entered the library, who attracted attention. Having shown the envelope, he stated that she was a letter from his lordship, and it seems that he was also concerned about the scandalous news. Having accepted the envelope from the hands of the Viscount, Chloe thought that he had not written anything from the moment he left for the capital. In a letter, Demian asked her to wait for him in the Tissa estate, responsibly fulfilling his duties of the Duchess there. He also hopes that she is waiting for their meeting with the same impatience as he. At the end, his signature was left. A few days later, Viscount told Gilles that he hopes that he safely accompanied his daughter on the estate. The guy replied that he had nothing to worry about. Chloe confirmed, saying that she was not a small child for a long time. Then the man took his daughter by the hand, sadly recalling the time when she and Alice were still children. Viscount said a dreary voice that they will always be his little girls, whom he will always love. When asked if he would call her so, even in old age, the man replied that she was right, albeit the Duke's wife. He also understood that she had to leave him for a long time, but the circumstances did not form the way they wanted. At that very moment, the girl rushed into the arms of her father, who was pleasantly surprised by this gesture, reciprocating her. Clutching him, Chloe thought that she would like to stay here forever, but she said that she would be in order. After all, he himself saw how the Duke values it, but the man's face said that he would not want to let her go. The girl mentally told him that she did not want to leave for the Tissa estate, but she said aloud that everything would be fine. Then she smiled, asking her father to let her go with a smile, since now his daughter is an honorary duchess. After a while, sitting in the train compartment, Gilles told Chloe that he would be in perfect order, being in a commodity car. Inspecting the environment, he added that this compartment is too gorgeous for such as he, and now he is a little uncomfortable. Having lowered her head, the girl replied that they had 2 long days of travel ahead, and would not want to be left alone. Indeed, soon she will spend most of her time alone, no matter how much she was against. Suddenly, the guy said that he had snowed. Looking out the window, Chloe agreed with him, recalling her house again. After 2 days, they arrived at the birch castle of the Tissa house, who met them with a huge gate and complete silence. The door was opened by the maid, greeting her lordship, that she was Eliza, the senior maid, the head of the household. Chloe noticed that this castle is incredibly huge, and only one person came to meet a new mistress. This may mean that she is not happy here, and in the near future, she will have to endure a neglect. Putting a cane on the floor, the girl thanked her for the warm greeting, after which she was worried about Gilles. She asked. They could not cook a little food for his accompanying way, she agreed. Eliza said that she would ask the maids to cook something for her servant, after which she asked to follow her. Turning to the guy, Chloe said that she was sorry that she could not accompany him personally, and then thanked him. The maid again called her behind her, after which, limping, Chloe headed after her, trying to keep up. Opening the door, Eliza reported that Lady Chloe had arrived. The woman ordered her to let her in, after which she greeted. The girl said that for her, it is a great honor to finally meet her, adding that they are very grateful to her. The woman asked to look at her, after which Chloe slowly raised her head, paying attention to her appearance. She said that she was pretty, and the girl thought that the Duke must have gone to his mother. The woman said that she looks like a deer that Demian once caught in his youth. Then she asked if she hides fantastic wealth or she has knowledge about skeletons in the royal closet. Not understanding the meaning of the question, Chloe answered negatively, noting that the Duke's mother slowly approaches her. Touching her cheek, the woman said that he chose her as a bride for reasons other than practical. It is true that it is beautiful, but hunting for a deer with a damaged leg for the sake of sports interest is unusual for him. She simply did not believe her ears when he asked for family jewelry to make her an offer. Perhaps it was curiosity, because from time to time he enjoys very acute sensations. Chloe replied that His Grace would not have made a decision to marry, referring only to short-term curiosity. I do not know the reasons for his choice. She intends to serve him and this house with all her soul, despite her own shortcomings. Such a speech surprised, and at the same time satisfied the woman, who said that she was smarter than it seems. Chloe to her liking, with such a pretty face as her, and she is confident that her jewelry will be very suitable for her. And since she seems to have a good head on her shoulders, she will help her control the castle, solving important issues. She did not expect less from her son, because for him there is nothing more important than the family in the world, if she has not yet noticed. Then the woman asked that now that she was here, what about listening to the stories of Demian's childhood? Toward evening, entering her new chambers, Chloe immediately flopped onto the bed, almost fall asleep from fatigue. This woman chatted about him incessantly. She suggested that he had a strict upbringing, but he was clearly adored. It was very tiring for her to listen to the laudatory stories about Demian, but she was able to cope. Suddenly, in front of her, she saw his photo in the frame, surprised that he put his portrait in his wife's bedroom. Having lowered his photos down, Chloe quickly changed clothes and immediately went to bed, unable to fight fatigue. A few days later, the woman said that she was surprised, Siezrev, as she locked herself in the office for 3 days. In this, she looks like Demian. As soon as he begins to focus at some kind of work, he hardly noticed the dawn. Then she asked that Chloe wanted to discuss. The girl first hesitated before starting to say anything. A little nervous, she asked. Eliza could not leave them for a moment alone for this conversation. The maid frowned, and the woman grinned, saying that Eliza serves him since Demian was born. She is almost a family member, and there is no such conversation with the family, the essence of which she cannot know. She remembered how the Duke asked her in the last letter, how she was a new life in a birch castle. He hoped that she was performing her duties in a reliable way, and that she would not disappoint him. Chloe decided that it was more like a written warning than a simple caring letter. After all, he clearly hinted that she was supposed to fulfill some duty as a duchess, and it was for a reason. Chloe said that after studying accounting books within 3 days, she found a discrepancy in finances. Obviously, the money is flowing through the gap. The woman replied that it was not so easy to monitor the castle of this size, and this is another of the many reasons for the girl to control them as carefully as possible. It is not clear from the records what exactly the money is spent on, and the amount of taxes we are charged from the population does not develop. There is no correspondence between the number of wine bottles in the cellar and the amount recorded in the accounting books. This happened more than once or two, repeatedly. Apparently, such errors began to appear at one specific time, namely, during the time when Eliza took on the role of the economy. Since then, the accounting report has been fucked incorrectly. Hearing these words, the main maid trembled, and a fright was written on her face when she realized that she was opened. There was silence, during which only the sniffing of the maid was heard, who did not know what awaited her. Dissatisfied with such news, a woman politely asked the maid to leave them for a moment. She agreed. Why did she ask if Chloe seems to be more reasonable to discuss all issues alone than to speak in person? The girl added that it was necessary to dismiss Eliza and the main groom. The woman asked, but with him what was wrong? Chloe explained that Eliza would need to use the wagon in order to secretly withdraw the inventory outside the house. With this volume of stolen, it was impossible to act alone, which means that she had an accomplice. These two are faithful servants who supported the hostess in difficult times. Their dismissal cannot be discussed carelessly. But this makes their deception more unforgivable. If she appreciated gratitude, she would not have done this. And the gap, similar to this one over time, will only become more. So such a question needs to be solved immediately. After all, if she closes her eyes, their actions will only become worse, which promises big losses for the castle and the family. Suddenly, the woman got angry, asking why she is so persistent to complicate her life with such things. And why does she call her Madame? As if they were strangers. Because she entered the family, getting married. Chloe embarrassed. Then the girl suggested calling her mother, but the woman in this appeal noticed rather inappropriate. Then she decided to finish the conversation by discussing this issue with Demian when he would return. Then she would decide. She will have to have dinner alone, since now the hostess does not have an appetite, who disappeared after the conversation. Chloe wanted to say that it was harmful to skip meals, which I heard a displeased request to be silent a little. Going to the exit, the mistress of the house stated that she really could be completely unbearable if she wanted. This situation and reaction of the Duke's mother very upset the girl, who did not expect that everything would turn out that way. A little later, she sat at the dining table, watching the maid slowly pouring her a glass of water. Having bowed, the maid politely asked to call her if she needs something else. She will be nearby. After that, pitch silence came, during which Chloe looked at the plate on which lay a piece of meat. She sadly thought that she managed to make almost the whole house hate herself well. Chloe heard the maids whispered that she wanted to fire Eliza when she barely stayed here for a week. Others were unhappy that this is why it is so important to be extremely careful when choosing a bride. At that moment, all food for a girl became tasteless, after which she mentally asked herself if everything was fine with her father. She also hoped that Gilles returned intact and unharmed, and perhaps Alice wrote a letter to them again. She became interested when the Duke arrives, whether it would be at least better than now, what she immediately doubted. Having menacingly plunging the fork into the meat, Chloe, with anger, thought that to drive people in a corner was the main tradition of Tissa's house. Now she did not even know which of them worse, a mother or son who made her life worse in such a short time. Suddenly, Chloe shuddered when Demian said that she had a pleasant conversation, although she did not often talk to herself. Hanging over her, the man said that he gave rise to a feeling of loneliness in her heart during his absence. Chloe did not have time to say anything, as a woman ran into the dining room at the same second, welcoming her dear son. She said that he should have warned that he would come. He replied that he had returned earlier because he was bored. The girl was embarrassed to watch this picture, because of which everything that was happening in her head was written on her face. The woman said that the return road completely exhausted him, but on the contrary, he was in high spirits. Then he said that, hurrying here, he was pretty hungry, and now it would be nice to quench hunger. After which he noticed that the table was already partially covered, and his wife was also present. The delighted mother replied that she would immediately order Madame d'Aton to prepare something for him. Paying attention to the table, Demian said that this is not necessary, since the table is already on the table. When Chloe rose from his seat, he heard her husband ask to prepare an additional serving. When everyone took their places, Demian asked Chloe if she had everything like everything. She answered in the affirmative. The girl added that everyone was so kind that she made her stay here incredibly pleasant and comfortable. The Duke was glad to hear this, but as soon as he put a piece of meat in his mouth, he immediately turned him out, and his mother cried out. Having spat out the meat, after which he rubbed his mouth with a napkin, the man menacingly ordered to immediately call the doctor. The frightened mother immediately began to ask her son what was the matter, and why did he need a doctor so suddenly. He replied that being the main doctor of this family, he did not take care of her health, and he intends to execute him. The woman tried to convince him that she was in perfect order. Then she began to find out what he was talking about. Demian replied that she had tasted unpleasant food, and this leads to the idea that with her feeling of taste, something is wrong. Having dismissed, Mother said that everything was in order with her taste, and the doctor was innocent, and there is no need to punish him. The man asked if she was sure, because the steak is hard to absurdity, and the vegetables are too dry and sluggish. The soup was clearly cooked a few days earlier, and the wine is categorically not suitable for serving on the table at Tissa at home. Suddenly, he asked if she wanted to say that she knew from the very beginning that they had served unusual food. Without hearing any answer, the Duke grabbed the knife, after which the chef was menacingly ordering to bring to him. A few minutes later, the woman said that she did not understand how the skills for the almshouse could be here. At that very moment, several maids began to whisper among themselves, nervously glancing at each other. The head of the head continued to say that those who were instructed to cover on the table made some mistake. At that very moment, the servant fell to her knees, screaming that they committed a heavy sin, after which they asked for mercy. Demian looked strictly at them and asked if they hoped to stay alive after such an insult to his family. He ordered them to be thrown in a dungeon and tear them to pieces, when suddenly Chloe said that it was only one meal. Then she also looked strictly at her husband, politely asking him to forgive them for this small misconduct. Although the food is intended for the almshouse, it is still suitable for use. The Duke decided to stand on his own. He said that sitting here, eating such inedible scraps without a single discontent, is an insult to his name. Although she is from a modest family, there should be common sense in this. The girl immediately apologized for negligence. But then she added that, as his wife, or the idea of this house, she asks him to restrain himself and show mercy. She also asked them to give them the opportunity to treat her with an official dinner, appropriate to Tissa's house. That evening, sitting on her bed, Chloe thought that by a happy chance she managed to save the life of the servants. Demian said that he should mercy if this is what she wants, because she really is generosity. However, she is very glad that she did not have to see how their heads fly, because even then she began to feel sick. Suddenly, they knocked on her room, and the maid said that His Grace wants to see her in her chambers. Chloe tried to understand what was impatient at such an hour, and then replied that she would come as soon as she was ready. But at the same moment, Demian himself entered the room, with a smile, and asked, "What preparations can you need?" The girl tried to cover herself, while the man said that there was no need for etiquette and a proper dress, especially at this hour of the night, when they can see and communicate unofficially, after which he approached her. Chloe replied that to meet him in his chambers as soon as she dressed, after which she asked to give her a couple of minutes. Having crouched on her bed, he repeated that there was no need to observe etiquette, and she just needs to come. The girl frowned, after which she slowly went out of bed, hearing the question whether she could stand without support. She replied that it was hard, and she could easily be on the floor, after which she asked if he wished. The man replied that it would be charming, after which he asked if they could go to his room. After a couple of minutes, they sat opposite each other, when Chloe asked if he had some important matter. Demian asked in response how she thinks what matters could be between her husband and wife at such a late hour. The girl's eyes widened when she decided that he could hint at an act that was not on the day of their wedding. The girl's heart immediately stabbed, while a man watched her reaction and a reddened face with a smile. Now he can easily say what exactly she was thinking about, and he was pleased to watch this picture. He said that he intends to reward her for the conscientious performance of duties as a duchess. Chloe wanted to answer something, but the Duke interrupted her, adding that she got rid of Elise and Robinson for him. This information dumbfounded her when she asked that he knew all this time about their lies and fraud. He replied that he loves his mother and knows how much she was attached to these two, so she closed his eyes. Then he asked why she was making such a shocked face, deciding that she was shocking, that he loves his mother. Rising from his seat, he said that although she is capricious and immature, she is a woman who gave him life, and in the near future, she should have to spend time on their villa in the south at the moment. The thing is that she just has a broken heart due to the dismissal of the poor Ellie and Robbie, and she needs to be alone. Having picked up the box, the Duke added that she would benefit her to change the situation and breathe fresh air, and this should help her better adapt to life here. The last words very much surprised Chloe. When he put a box in front of her, the girl asked herself to be that this man is showing kindness. When she lifted the lid, she looked at a surprise at the legs made to order specifically for her. Demian said that as soon as she gets used to him, he could go comfortably and freely without support. Then, he asked her to try on that he could see, but this made the girl think for a second. Having made the decision, Chloe closed the box, thanking him for the gift, but now she did not dare to use it now. With a dissatisfied look, she added that the use remains at the discretion of the recipient, so she is trying on later. She herself thought that she did not know how to use it, and did not want to see how she hobbies and falls. Obviously, he intends to mock her, but Chloe uneashed his intentions and immediately stopped. Demian said that she believes that the invitation of her servant in a compartment for a date should also be at her discretion. The girl was amazed, and the Duke explained that when she was a member of the Tissa house, she hears all kinds of news, but for what purpose she demonstrates the generosity that exceeds the one that the servant deserves, and brought him to the estate. Now his tone sounded very frightening, because he was sure that Chloe tuned everything so that Gilas was nearby. Chloe replied that Gilas is a faithful servant who has been working for their family since the time when he was still a child. Demian replied that Eliza fed him instead of his mother when he was a baby, and still betrayed their trust. The girl realized what he was driving at, after which she calmly asked him to stop insulting her. The Duke replied that he did not insult her, but gives advice. Come on, that her servant did not leave the railway station. And if people find out that he stayed here, because of some long-standing attachment to the mistress, then rumors will crawl. Chloe was dumbfounded that Gilles did not return to the Verdier estate, wondering why. Demian did not believe that she abandoned her duties of the Duchess and disgraced him in this way. After that, he slowly approached her, with an orderly tone, asking her to immediately try on the prosthesis. Some time later, the girl once again fell, trying to stand on her feet evenly, but to no avail. Having crouched in front of her on the knee, the Duke here already began to thoughtfully ask which part for her is uncomfortable. Then he helped her to rise, but she asked not to touch him, although he wanted to find out the shortcomings of the prosthesis. Chloe said that all the devices are uncomfortable because she does not need it, it only hurts her. Demian replied that as soon as she gets used to him, it will produce the opposite effect. It requires effort. Looking at her face, the man asked if she was crying. The girl turned her head and gave a negative answer. Suddenly, the man smiled, saying that this is absolutely right, because crying like a child is not appropriate for the Duchess. Then he began to touch her prosthesis, while Chloe said that he really looked like a devil. Having brought his face to her, Demian replied that he had yet to show what devil he could be. Suddenly, Demian asked what she was feeling now. Chloe replied that she was feeling an insult, but he did not believe her. Then the girl said that he was deeply upset. The man asked for permission to ask again how she was feeling. She replied that her heart beats painfully quickly. Then the Duke asked if her body was becoming hot, and does her blood boil so much that now she is not even able to control her breathing, and also her heart, which is about to jump out of her chest. The girl immediately blushed, answering with consent. But that is why she felt such an insult. After that, she closed her eyes, waiting for a kiss from Demian. When the kiss was interrupted, he asked what it was like to kiss with the man whom she compared with the devil. Breathing heavily, Chloe asked him if he would allow her to return to her chambers, thereby surprising the Duke with such a request. He suggested that he would give her courtesy, if this is what she wants. In response to this, the girl frowned. The next day, Demian's guests said that they would soon lay the railway to the Verdier estate. They decided that this was his wedding gift to his wife, to which he, in response, asked if they considered it a problem. But they were simply surprised that he was such a husband in front of me. Meanwhile, Chloe thought it was tiring. Then, they said that recently there was suspicious movements in the Duchy of Carter. They announced that the war is over, but they cannot be sure when they can hit with a knife in the back. They can strike at any time, and using their geographical position in their own interests. But his lordship must strike him. Perhaps soon he will actually have to make this decision. Grinkling at Chloe, who immediately shuddered, Demian said that he would like to know what his wife was thinking about it. After that, 3 pairs of eyes stared carefully at the girl, who did not even dare to raise her head. Then Chloe replied that she was just a simple layman when it comes to politics and diplomacy. One of the men replied that noble women from a good family, like her, would not have to worry about such. However, the girl continued, saying that she knew that the residents of Svanton were tired of the war. The Duke agreed. No one can guarantee victory in the war, and they cannot assume that Carter's military forces are still weak. As Count Weiss noted, the Duchy of Carter is quite capable of using its geographical position. The Count smiled, saying that the horizons of the Duchess were quite extensive. She was flattered by a compliment. Demian asked if they should just sit while the Card was building up forces, because they increased the fee for goods. When he asked what she was thinking on this score, 2 guests immediately began to move and mutter. Then they fell silent, fixing their eyes on the girl, waiting for whether she could also give a completely worthy answer. Having imperceptibly squeezing her dress, Chloe mentally concluded that he was trying to humiliate her in front of these men. Then she replied that an ideal solution would be to sign a peace treaty and avoid bloodshed. The Duke replied that this is nothing more than naive optimism, because promises are violated much more often than they are fulfilled. Chloe said that there is a way to guarantee that they will not violate the contract, because the kingdom will appreciate blood ties. There are many possible approaches, but the most effective of them is marriage. This would be effective. The duchy has one heir, and the royal family did not produce a single princess. Svanton has the heir Johannes, and the heir to the duchy Carter, 3 senior and unmarried sisters. When the proposal fell out of her mouth, the guests immediately began to chuckle and whispered among themselves. Looking at them, she tried to understand what was happening, while they discussed Prince Johannes with a smile. Then the girl decided that they were very tasty at her, but they try not to do this directly. Having cleared his throat, Count Weiss said that being married to the prince is too terrible to imagine it. Then he stated that her grace did not follow the red veil. Chloe immediately remembered the article about Demian and Isabella. Suddenly, the other guest asked what could spur him to raise the theme of the veil and wear his manners. Suddenly, the Duke smiled and said that he himself was curious whether his wife had ever read a red veil. Judging by her reaction, it seems that he is right, because when the veil was mentioned, Chloe shuddered barely. She replied that she read only once, but did not attach much importance to this, because it was just a cheap newspaper. Having risen, she said that she would ask to give a dessert, asking to continue their discussion. Weiss began to whisper that she was a wonderful woman, and he understands why the Duke was in such a hurry with this marriage. He was immediately answered that if he was in love with the wife of the former boss, he would be in great trouble. The Count said loudly that he was not interested in her romantically, bearing only her praise. The man felt only respect, while Chloe thought that these people were really the worst. When the night fell on the estate, someone suddenly knocked on the door, calling on Milady, who woke up from the noise. Hastily going down, the worried girl opened the door, simultaneously asking who was knocking at such an hour. Chloe was amazed when the woman abruptly grabbed her by the shoulder, although she still did not even have time to look at the guest. The dumbfounded girl immediately asked what she was doing here, addressing the breathless Eliza. At that very moment, the maid came running to them at all pores, loudly and displeasedly, turning to Madame Eliza. She should not see her, but the woman demanded to let her go, asking if she knew how old she worked here. She screamed that she dedicated her whole life and service to this family. At that time, Chloe frowned, watching her. She hastened to reassure her, after which she asked to tell why she was here. The woman immediately shuddered. Then she replied that her grandson had a fever, and he lost consciousness, and recently even began to wander. Eliza asked for permission to see a family doctor to at least somehow help to calm the heat and fever. Chloe thought, deciding that he could have the same disease that she suffered when she was a child. The girl ordered the doctor to immediately bring. She replied that she could not do it without permission. Then Chloe asked if she intended to disturb the dream of his lordship or forgot that she was the mistress of this castle. Awareness suddenly came to the maid, after which she screamed that she would immediately go after the doctor. When the maid ran away, Chloe turned to Eliza, asking her to put her on the back and take her to her house. To the dumb question, she replied that the fight against fever is a wartime war, and they should hurry. When they reached, the girl immediately began to develop the child, and Eliza was dumbfounded what she was doing. The woman was worried, asked loudly if she hears him, thinking that the child could freeze to death. However, Chloe did not pay attention to it, asking to go out and bring a little snow to cool the heat. Eliza sighed, after which she replied that if something happens to him, she would never forgive her for it. She replied that she could be offended, but if she does not want to see her grandson with lameness, she should trust her. After some time, the child slept tightly. The electrician said that Chloe did a striking job. After all, if her lordship came a little later, there would be no chance of a cure, so it is worth it to thank her. Burning her tears, Eliza asked how to repay, but she replied that she had saved his life not for the sake of duty. Now she was just glad that everything would be fine with the child, when suddenly a creak of the door was heard behind them. Demian entered the room, who turned to Chloe with displeasure, simultaneously crossing his arms over his chest. Eliza was dumbfounded and frightened by his appearance, while his wife looked at him invariantly. Meanwhile, the man ordered her to go out in a serious tone, not paying attention to the rest. Later, Chloe said that Eliza was supposed to leave 2 days ago, but could not do this because of her grandson's illness. All the money that she knocked from the castle was wasted by her son, who lost everything in gambling. The child is not to blame for anything. It was adults who sinned. Besides, Eliza devoted her whole life to the service of Tisa to the house. Having expressed everything to justify herself before her husband, the girl looked at his impartial and calm face. She added that she called the doctor without his permission, because she did not want to break his sleep. Suddenly he stopped. I said that he never asked her to report on everything that she was doing. After all, she does not need to justify her actions or apologize for what she considered necessary. But now, all that he wants to know is why she decided to help a person who betrayed their family. He was notified that she even wrote her a letter of recommendation to be accepted to another job. Chloe replied that having worked here all her life, she could not get a letter with good words anywhere. And with the doctor, the situation was urgent, so she could not waste time. But Demian thought differently. But he decided that in this way, she wanted to take off the load of guilt because of her dismissal or out of pity for her son. Hearing a negative answer, he asked if it was all due to the fact that she always experiences compassion for servants. The girl decided to ask a counter-question, asking if he could always give a clear explanation for her actions. The man proudly replied that almost always, Chloe turned away with displeasure, that then she was different. She also could not understand why he so persistently asked such questions. Demian tilted his head. He asked what she was doing when she wants to meet someone better, instead of asking questions. Having a look, Chloe blushed and uncertainly replied that she simply recognized them naturally. When she calmly watches a person, there are things that can be found out about them without any questions. They immediately remembered the moment when their views first met, after which a protracted silence came. Suddenly, the man noticed Chloe's reddened hands and immediately put his fur cloak on her. Then he said that he was considering the possibility of hiring Gilles to the now free position of the main groom. He lives starving, being a submarine at the railway station instead of returning. Now he has hard, but he has concessions Gotov and give him a decent job with a good salary. So, most likely, it will be an appropriate offer, because he is sure that the girl wants to keep him better. Chloe, with a smile, replied that he was worthy of trust, and she was ready to vouch for him with her life. In addition, she vowed that there was nothing incident between them. The Duke suddenly grinned. Why did he lean towards her, saying that if so, then she should now kiss him as a faithful wife? He asked to prove that his attitude with that servant was clean as snow, only in this case he would hire him. Chloe was surprised to answer that she had no desire to kiss him at this moment and prove something. Demian said that this poor boy would soon be on the train, but the girl replied that he was choosing where to live. The Duke said that he was a devoted husband, and the less confidence his wife inspires, the less he will be happy. In this kingdom, the power of the Duke is an order of magnitude more priority than the freedom of the servant, no matter how true he is. The girl grabbed the fur on her collar, after which she said that it was very regrettable for the kingdom. Gathering his strength, she asked him to lower his head. The man, with a smile on his face, immediately obeyed and leaned. But at that very moment, he was surprised when Chloe pulled him to him and passionately kissed him on his lips, blushing along the way. She tightly squeezed her cane, after which she pulled away from him, but the Duke asked not to try to escape, after which the girl again pulled him to her, kissing him again, because of which she was embarrassed even more. A trembling ran across her body, and when the kiss was interrupted, Demian said that her efforts were worthy of praise. However, he was a little upset that the hottest kiss, donated to her on this day, was for another. This makes him feel at the same time both extreme pleasure and the extreme degree of insult. The next day, Chloe wrote a letter to her father. I apologize for the long absence of letters on her part, in view of employment. It is so cold here that the river was facing, although it hardly had enough time to notice it. The servants here are cordial and welcoming, and the Duke did everything possible to help her adapt to life here. Pulling up a scribbled sheet, the girl thought that writing a lie was not so easy, especially to her father. Then she decided to write that there was another important news that can very surprise him very much. During the last correspondence, he mentioned that he was a frustrated decision of Gilas to leave his position. It seems that he was completely fascinated by the estate of Tissa, which he visited for such a short time. His Grace offered Gilas an excellent position in a birch castle, to which he immediately agreed. As he can judge, they communicate with her with extreme generosity and respect, so he has nothing to worry about. She wished him to remain in good health until her next letter, adding that she was cordially yearning for him. After a while, Chloe discovered Demiana during a game of billiards, who said that he had made brilliant blows. To his statement that he will soon have 100 points, the girl replied that he had just played against the rules. The man replied that she had previously stated that she did not know the rules, and if she did not want to play with him, then he was disappointed. Chloe asked why he called her in the middle of the night, because she quite regularly fulfills her duties of the Duchess. She also added that her attitude with the servants improved significantly when suddenly her eyes opened. The Duke handed her key, asking her to take what he heard the question if he wanted to engage in her right now. The man answered in the affirmative, because of which the girl sighed heavily, asked what the conditions of the game are. Chloe explained that playing without a bet, where nothing was put on a con, she is not of interest to her. Demian grinned, answering that she did not cease to surprise him, after which he asked what she wants. The girl said that if she wins, he must stop calling her to his chambers so late at night. Then the man asked if he won, whether she thought that he could lose, because it would be reckless. Preparing for the first blow, he concluded that if he still wins, he would take her what he wishes. Being completely confident in herself, the inspired Duchess replied that she agreed to such a bet. When the game began, Demian said that it was a foul, to which the girl replied that this simply could not be. Then he smiled, said that this was all a trick of vision, and Chloe realized that he could not trust this man. Looking at his wife, the man thought that he knew that she was an amazing woman in many respects, and yet she again surpassed all his expectations, because not every girl can surprise him so often. Then he asked if she knew that the essence of this game is to make the enemy a mistake. The Duke added that exactly 2 days later, a number of senior guests will arrive on a visit to the Birch Castle. He trusts the hope that she, as a duchess, will do everything in her power to provide them with a warm welcome. There was also another important detail that Chloe should know about, that the Marquis of Isabella will also be among the guests. She is quite a picky lady, so he advises her to be extremely attentive to preparations. When Chloe hit the ball, she immediately froze, not paying attention to the game, being dumbfounded by his words. The man grinned, saying that she apparently lost, but now it was far from the most important. Chloe tried to comprehend what he had just said, and what this person was thinking about, telling her about the Marquise. Then the man hung over her, saying that her turn to give him what he wants. She asked that it could be. The Duke replied that she wanted her lips, but he heard the answer whether this desire is sincere. Having grunted, Demian asked what was wrong, because she herself offered to make a bet, and everything was on her conditions. I wanted to see her broken, so that all the feelings that she suppressed would be freed and flared up in front of his eyes. Suddenly, Chloe turned around in confusion, saying that she had never felt such contempt for another person. The man replied that this was a great honor, after which their lips were in touch, and silence reigned for a couple of seconds. When the kiss ended, the Duke asked if it was all that she wanted to say, but there was something else. He asked her to continue, listening carefully, because he was wondering what she wanted to tell him. He wanted her to shout at him, asked how he dared to insult her so much, and show that she had inside. The girl squeezed the dress, after which she relaxed, saying that if he has no further instructions, she wants to leave. When she left the room, Demian was left alone, being in complete confusion due to her restraint. Then he smiled gloomily, telling himself that, it seems, he underestimated his wife's ability to drive him crazy. Meanwhile, Chloe, limping, walked along the corridor, trying to digest the information just heard. A couple of days later, the guests arrived in the Birch Castle, and the Needles thanked them that they had come such a long way. She trusted the hope that their stay here would be comfortable. Then the girls began to whisper. Then the Duchess greeted Isabella, who was worried that her stay could upset Chloe. The girl replied that she was a close friend of his lordship, so she has no significant reasons to be upset. Isabella said that this was not her desire to be at an event at which she would feel bad. Looking at how she wipes her eyes, other girls began to ask if everything was in order with her. Sobbing, she asked for forgiveness, added that she realized that the world is actually a very cruel place. Chloe sighed. I am surprised at the behavior of the Marquise, which at this second played the role of the unfortunate lady. But whether her suffering will be equal to the feeling of a woman who shows hospitality to her husband's possible mistress. Then she said that if she feels discomfort, she will prepare a room where she can relax. Without hearing the answer, Chloe asked again. She did not want to return to the castle to rest a little. The Marquise cried again, saying that she was not happy here, and she knew that she would not be a desired person here. The dumbfounded Duchess immediately apologized that she did not mean this, but other girls were whispering again. Suddenly, Demian was behind Chloe, who began to ask what happened with an impartial face. The Duchess replied that the Marquise is important, so she suggested that she return to the castle for relaxation. Seeing the Duke, Isabella shuddered, after which she turned away, saying that she should not come here. Only she is to blame for being in the know how negatively the widows and divorced in this country. Another girl said that she could not believe that there is at least one living soul that would believe in it. In addition, street gatherings in the middle of winter would be very difficult. That is, that she had just arrived from Svan. Another girl said that she also does not feel very well. Asked if there was nothing unusual in food. Observing their chatter, Chloe concluded that they were filled with hostility to her, and they were on the side of the Marquise. They will prefer not to accept the fact that the Count's incompetent daughter, without a penny in his pocket, has now become a duchess. Leaving, Demian said that he would immediately prepare for Isabella a carriage so that she could return. Suddenly, the Marquise said sadly that she did not want to spoil this event because of her presence. Suddenly, Chloe said that if she felt awkward because of her, they would send her an invitation, and if she feels better, then she, like a duchess, hopes that the Marquis will have a bit of them with her society. However, if she is unhealthy, then she was a war to leave to rest. That was all she wanted to tell her. The rest of the guests concerned the same. The girl replied that they were just overlooking too much. They were very grateful for her anxiety, but they had no intention to leave the event early. Chloe was also tense because she had not attended events for a long time, and then asked what Isabella would like. Having lowered her head, the girl replied that she was better, after which she asked for forgiveness for anxiety. Chloe said that soon they would give pudding, which was selected to everyone to taste. Suddenly, Demian stated that this was the favorite dessert of the Marquise. At the same moment, the Duchess covered the numbness. The man added that it was very caring on her part, after which he thanked his wife for hospitality. With a sigh, the girl with an indifferent look turned in his direction, calmly answering her husband's gratitude. The Duke crossed his arms over his chest, watching with surprise after the leaving girl who again surprised him. Meanwhile, Isabella, who had previously played the role of an unfortunate girl, stopped crying and sighed. She herself thought that it was unexpected, after which she concluded that the joke was bad with this woman. A little time later, the girls discussed that it was the Marquise who met with his lordship of the first than Chloe. Therefore, she has every reason to feel as if she had taken her from her. Then they asked what kind of absurdity to expect from them that they would ride on skates so much cold weather. So you just need to endure until then. She would never have come here if not for her husband's business. After overhearing their conversation, Isabella was surprised that she had taken her from her rightfully. Then she looked at Demian, who rolled on the rink, Chloe, who was sitting peacefully in special sledges. The Marquise grinned, deciding that this was a baseless assumption, because she does not intend to deprive herself of anything. While the rest of the girls rode skates, the Duke said that today the weather was beautiful. Chloe agreed. When asked if she liked the hidden enmity between the ladies, she replied that thanks to him, everything went well. Without touching Isabella, he did not think that she could allow herself so easily, but she surpassed expectations. She asked if he finds all this situation ridiculous, to which he received an answer, that she did not see obstacles for this. Having frowned and sighed, Chloe said that she could afford to show disrespect in the eyes of the servants, but then she would irrevocably lost authority as a duchess in the eyes of other high-ranking persons. If this happened, she knows that this would lead to negative consequences for both him and for the house. She only honestly fulfilled her duty to the Duchess, which he loves to mention at every opportunity. Then the man turned to her, asking if she was offended at him. The girl first said nothing and shuddered. After a pause, she replied that even if so, she was not so stupid as to recognize this fact out loud. A surprised question, why? Chloe replied that everything is that, henceforth, her life is entirely in his hands. She has no desire to be thrown out in the middle of the frozen lake due to the insult caused. At that very moment, Damien laughed that in this world, there is no one who amuses him as much and often as she. However, the Duchess did not see anything ridiculous in these words, because of which she calmly turned her face away from him. After a while, the Duke said that he did not want to leave his wife alone for a long time, so he needs to hurry. The interlocutor replied that if his wife showed her lordship any disrespect, he would like to apologize. Damien asked if he wanted to see him only for this. The mustachioed man shuddered, after which he apologized again. Looking at his wife, the Duke asked himself what she was thinking right now, fixing her gaze somewhere forward. If he could only recognize what was happening in her head now, it would quench this painful thirst. He wants to know how the world seems to her, wants to study her to the tips of his fingers, and understand her inner world. He also wanted to be her only eyes. But what kind of desire that he had never experienced before? Little blushing, he asked himself. Maybe so that right now he craves for himself the love of this woman. Then he asked aloud whether he really crazy, while his interlocutor did not understand what the Duke was now interpreting. He replied that if he is looking for forgiveness, let him tell his wife an apology directly to Chloe. Then he asked Lord Spencer not to waste him in vain. From these words, the interlocutor shuddered again. Damien said that he had to go until someone caused an even more serious insult to his wife. At that very moment, a loud cry was heard. One of the women began to call Chloe, and the Duke immediately reacted. The girls shouted in chorus that she was in danger, while the ice under the Duchess and began to crack more and more. The next second, Chloe completely plunged into the water, slowly dropping to the bottom, unable to get out. Exhaling the air, the frightened girl tried to understand what was happening and why now she was so cold. Then she decided that this is how she would die. Thought that she would again wanted to see her father, Alice, and Gilles. Suddenly, before her eyes, the image of Damien arose, who smiled at her and called to him, enveloping with warmth. She had already begun to lose consciousness, not feeling how the Duke's strong hands picked her up to pull her out of the water. Chloe has already reconciled with her fate, but Damien could not allow this to happen and had to save her. When they got out, the man immediately began to check his wife's condition, hoping that he had time on time. At this time, Damien got angry, being sure that this was not an accident, and someone decided to kill Chloe. When the evening came, Chloe was in her chambers, while the doctor said that at this moment she needed peace. It is incredibly successful that His Grace immediately rushed to her help. Otherwise, it would be too late. If he at least hesitated a little, irreparable harm could be caused to her, and perhaps even lethal. The maid was worried that she was very glad that my lady was in order, but she did not answer. She thought that the sled could not fall on their own, which means that someone deliberately pushed her. It was not difficult to guess who was standing behind this. Then she clarified that all the guests had parted, except for the Marquise. Margaret responded with consent, adding that the Marquise lost consciousness at the sight of her insensitive body. The girl decided to ask where she was now. The maid was surprised to ask why she needed her. The Duchess replied that there was nothing serious, but there is something that she should tell her. Meanwhile, Isabella said that she finally had the opportunity to talk to the Duke personally. She said that everything was exactly as she expected. The ailment of Prince Johannes is becoming more serious, and it seems that the king feels that the uprising is inevitable. Having heard this, Damien froze with a glass in his hand. The girl smiled, adding that His Majesty threatened to take her life if she did not bring him to Svan. Then she asked what he would say to take refuge in Winsbury Villa for an indefinite time. She will tell His Majesty that he disappeared without a trace on the way to Svan, thereby providing assistance to Damien. While the Marquis said that he had nothing to worry about, and on his side, the man held out his hand, stroking her cheek. The man replied that it was hoped that she did not think that he would really go to Winsbury on her advice. The girl replied that it was dangerous, but the man said that she was cold, so always happens when she is lying. Demian suggested that in Winsbury he would be waiting for a detachment of killers. He must be crazy to get caught by him. When asked what he has in mind, the Duke asked not to pretend to be an ignoramus, because he puts himself up with a complete idiot. He asked if she thought that he would ignore the fact that she betrayed her and decided to unite with the king. After that, the man began to add alcohol into the glass, saying that from now on nothing else connects them. She now has nowhere to return, and if she does not manage to lure him, His Majesty probably get rid of her. Isabella replied that if he had not left her after his marriage, she would never have thought to betray him. After listening to her, the Duke in a calm tone replied that she was saying wonderful things that even sound funny. After all, how can he leave her, even if he never thought about her as her woman, and she considers herself abandoned? Her only task was to play the role of his mistress, while the investigation of the divisions of the royal family is underway. But even this would be unthinkable if she had not been the maid of honor of the deceased queen, and in this case, even more so. In addition, he believed that he had already repaid her for her kindness, but there was no more in their relationship. Having fallen in front of him and grabbing his leg, the Marquise cried out that if she returned to the king now, he would kill her. She loudly asked not to leave her, when suddenly the man began to stroke her chin, thereby giving hope. But at the same moment, he asked if she had thought to survive after he found out about an attempt to kill his wife. Isabella immediately began to retreat, shouting loudly that it was not her. She was not close to her when it happened. Demian asked not to take him even more. I repeat such a ridiculous lie, which is very difficult to believe in. Suddenly, the girl ran to him and hugged him from behind, shouting loudly that she loves him with all her heart and soul. Then she cried, "Beg you to save and help." But in response, she received only the menacing and stern gaze of the Duke. Clutching him, the Marquis said that she did everything out of love for him, but Demian replied that it was too late. The man sighed to hold the girl in his arms, after which he asked her to get out of his eyes immediately. Meanwhile, Chloe, which I wanted to visit Demian's chambers, heard Isabella screaming that she loved him. The Duchess froze, while Margaret, standing behind her, stunnedly put her palms to her mouth. Then the girl turned sharply, invited the maid to return to her chambers so as not to interfere with them. At that very moment, the Duke heard someone's voices outside the door, after which he decided that it could be Chloe. Having released the Marquise from his arms, he headed for the exit, noticing the retreating wife and red-haired maid. The man said that she woke up, wanted to prescribe her complete peace, and then asked why she was here. Chloe smiled tightly, answering that she wanted to see the Marquise and apologize for the arranged pranks. Demian replied that at the moment she was not able to accept her, and it is worth meeting her at another time. Then Chloe said that since he was here too, she would like to tell him something. The man immediately strained. Clutching the cane tightly, the girl asked for permission to return home, to her native Verdier estate. Hearing this request, the Duke stared dumbfounded at his wife. "I do not understand what caused this decision." She explained that the misfortune that happened to her gave rise to a passionate desire to see her father briefly. Demian replied that he could not allow this. The disgruntled girl decided to find out the reason. The Duke replied that now she is the wife of Demian von Tisa, and not the daughter of Thomas Verdier, which was before. The Duchess, faithful to her duty, would never have a thought of hearing her husband to the mercy of fate. Then she asked whether she would fulfill her duties while he was nourished the affection for her mistress. The man froze, after which, with a malicious smile on his face, asked if she was jealous of him to the brand of Isabella. Turning away, Chloe immediately began to deny everything, but her behavior told the Duke completely in the opposite. Then the man decided to return to the conversation about visiting the Verdier estate somehow another time. Then, perhaps, they will be able to find a way to avoid separation. But the girl did not comfort. He decided to complete this conversation, saying that he had to take care of some very important matters. At that very moment, the door closed behind her, and finally, the Duke wished her good night. She did not answer. That same night, wandering through the snowy forest, Chloe did not understand why she felt so exhausted. She entered this marriage, well aware of what kind of person he was, but still cannot get used to it. She promised herself that she would not take care of his personal life, but now she did not know what exactly she expected from him. Then she fell to her knees, not paying attention to the cold in her legs, Now she only wanted to run away. If she could only, she would have returned home in the blink of an eye, so as not to stay here for a second longer. After a while, she reached Gilles' house, saying that he was discouraged by her unexpected visit. The worried guy immediately wanted to ask her what happened, as if a friend. The girl abruptly cut him off. She explained that there was no reason for concern. She just unexpectedly felt house longing. Chloe said that when she saw him, she could feel as if she had taken there, at least for a while. He wanted to contact her, but the girl suddenly stated that it was a delightful tea, thanking him along the way. Surviving a little, Gilles replied that he could not be compared with the very first cup of tea, which she offered him. Chloe's gaze immediately became dreary when she replied that 10 years had already passed, as they first met. With a smile on his face, the guy specified that 11 years had passed. She was surprised that he remembered the exact date of the first meeting. She immediately transferred to children's memories when she told Gilles that he looked just like a puppy. The guy looked in surprise at the girl who was able to remember his name, after which he immediately blushed. A sweet and smiling girl handed him a cup of tea, after which she said that he was very glad that he was here. On that day, she handed him the warmest and tasty cup of tea in the world that he had ever tried. Having froze, Gilles added that he would never forget this, since it was his happiest memory. Chloe thanked him for the warm words. I will add that she was warming the thought there, that her kindness had meaning. Suddenly, the guy turned to her again, wanting to say something important, but he pulled time, doubting more strongly. Why did he say that the water was boiling? After which he asked to let him know if she wishes even more tea. As soon as it began to dawn, Chloe ran along the corridor, do not believe the car, which managed to fall asleep in Gilles' house. She was lucky that no one noticed this, because she almost caused a terrible misunderstanding of the Duke. After all, if he finds out about this, then this will have serious consequences for Gilles and his location here. And now she asked herself what she only thought when she allowed herself to relax a bit next to him. Suddenly, she heard a girl's cry, because of which she turned sharply, trying to find out where the scream was heard. The girl dropped the cane when she heard the maid screaming heartily that the dead man was lying right here. Her shock knew no bounds when the maid clarified that the Marquise Isabella had died, that she died in her chambers. The next day, the policeman said that the body of the Marquise was discovered by her maid, who accompanied her. During the investigation, a bubble was found with arsenic in the chambers of the Duchess. The same poison was in the cup itself. Chloe immediately swore that she had never seen such a substance, and even more so, would not dare to use it. Something recorded in a notebook. The man continued to say that he was discovered in the Duchess's room. There are also testimonies of several witnesses proving her hostile relations to the Marquise. Demian immediately began to ask who dared to assume this, wanting to know specifically the names. Then he embittered. In addition, he asked if he wanted to say that his wife was involved in the murder of the Marquise. The police apologized, saying that he could not reveal the identity of witnesses for the purpose of their security. It is also known that the only person who is allowed to enter the chambers of the Duchess is her maid. Chloe immediately made a shiver, but Demian squeezed her hand, said that his wife was not able to harm anyone, and even if she was guilty of a crime, she would have to pour poison into a teacup per night. But they were extremely busy all night, after which the Duke hastened to hear confirmation from his wife. The policeman said that he would like to ask a question directly to her lordship, asking where she was last night. The girl squeezed the dress harder, but the Duke answered instead, saying that his wife was with him all night. Then Demian again asked her confirmation, but the girl was too shocked to answer. By evening, she was informed that according to the order, she should stay here before the start of the trial. 3 days later, Chloe, lying in bed, asked herself if she wanted the Marquise of Isabella sincerely. It is no secret to anyone that her feelings for her were far from positive, and she had hostility to her. But she never wanted to meet such fate to anyone, and even more so, in such a terrible way. After all, her resentment was not aimed at her, but at her husband, who dared to lie to her and escape after the wedding to her. Suddenly, she got up, hearing Demian entered her room, that she heard that she refused to eat. He added a dissatisfied tone that she would freeze herself with hunger to death if she continues in the same spirit. Then he crouched next to her. Hearing that it would save the executioner from work, she spoke as if she wanted to die. The Duke said that they are questioned by his testimony because in the morning they were discovered separately. Chloe said that she had not killed the Marcus. Someone must have put arsenic in her piece in order to substitute her. Demian said that if this is so, then it was done in her absence, after which he asked where she was that night. Then he stroked her cheek, asking why she did not tell the police that she had spent at night at Gilles' house. Hearing this from her husband's lips, the Duchess came into shock, because she could not understand where he knew about this. Demian answered the dumb question, saying that he had come to him and raised a noise regarding its absence that night. The battered guy almost shouted at the explosion that Lady Chloe did not do anything reprehensible. It seemed that he was ready to talk to the police, but he reassured him while she remained silent. He thought why, despite the presence of a witness who would confirm her innocence, she did not mention him. The girl replied that not a single nobleman would wish that shameful rumors about his wife and servant would spread. The Duke asked if she was sure that this was not because she wants to protect the one with whom she secretly spent the night, or she is afraid that because of her infidelity, he will divorce with her at the same second, and her family will fall again. Chloe swayed, answering that she had not committed a crime, nor was it wrong for her husband. Demian said that in this case, Gilles should testify, so that at least she remains alive. It is pointless to say that she will not be able to avoid divorce, or that her family will not tolerate. He knew that she was not able to make such a decision, and would never sacrifice her loved ones for her sake. Then the Duke began to carefully examine the girl, watching her reaction, behavior, and movements. Then he asked to beg her to be salvation. Even if the court did not take his testimony, he has the strength to save her life. Chloe gently took his hand, after which she pulled him to her, gathering her strength to ask him about it. Demian mentally asked her to continue to beg him to help her, because he is the only one who could save her. Suddenly, Chloe said that if he has such a power, she asks for the execution to be carried out secretly. The man was dumbfounded when she added with tears that this was her last request to him in the status of the Duchess. A few days later, in the courtroom, the judge asked if there was a duke with a duchess from midnight to 6 in the morning. Then he asked if his testimony had changed. Demian frowned at his wife, answering affirmatively. Looking at Chloe's sullen face, he remembered her words that she wished that the execution would have been scattered secretly. The judge asked how he would explain that the next morning he was found in his own office and not in the chambers, and were there any witnesses who saw him along with the Duchess to confirm this fact. Demian asked if the judge wanted to say that he would be false, but he asked not to dramatize. Then the man added that in the absence of witnesses, his testimony does not deserve confidence, but the witness was. All the courts in the hall were dumbfounded, including Chloe, when the door opened and the guy entered the hall. The Duke said that he was interpreting about the call of Gilles Watteau, the servants of the Birch Castle, as a witness. The judge asked if he would swear in the face of the Lord to tell the truth. The guy immediately answered in the affirmative. Chloe stunnedly looked at the guy, mentally asking him what. He only thinks, coming here. Gilles said that he could confirm the fact that that night the Duchess was with the Duke in her chambers. When asked why he decided to be silent about this until now, the guy replied that his sin was his fault. He explained that he was peering behind the intimate life of his owners, but Demian asked to speak as clearly as possible. Gilles said that being completely exhausted, after the whole day of serving with the guests, he could not fall asleep. Hearing the sounds at night, he decided to find out what was happening, after which he took a candle and hurriedly went out into the yard. Going out, he clearly found the quarreling Duke and the Duchess, who once again did not share something. It was an ordinary quarrel for a married couple, caused by misunderstanding due to the Marquise. However, their dispute quickly came to an end, after which they decided to fix their truce, indulging in love. They went to the barn, and incapable of restraining curiosity, he committed a serious sin, following them. That night, he spied on the most obscene moments of their life, which he now spared, more than ever. The judge asked if he kept silence all this time, only to hide such an insignificant misconduct. Demian replied that for servants, even minor misconduct have consequences that affect their lives. But he personally will investigate the misconduct of Gilles as soon as the trial is completed. Chloe, looking at the guy, realized that they agreed on their testimonies in order to free her from accusations. However, she sincerely worried that such a lie could lead to serious problems in Gilles. The judge was not able to pronounce the verdict based on the readings of the servant, so he would postpone the decision. Demian, with anger, asked if they were going to keep her wife in a cold prison cell until then. The judge also menacingly asked him not to forget that he was authorized and sent to them by himself. The Duke replied that he had measured to say goodbye to the royal judge with marginal courtesy, but patience burst. He took a button from his pocket, saying that the doctor of Tisa at home discovered this in the mouth of the late Marquise. Then the man loudly stated that this was a button used purely on the robes of the royal servants. He ordered the doctor to remain silent for the good of the royal family, but now he has no reason to hide it. After all, if the persecution of his wife continues, he has no reason to keep this secret. Chloe was shocked that Demian thought out everything so carefully to drop all the accusations against another. Then he menacingly stated that the royal maid was the main suspect, and it was her to arrest her. 10 days later, late at night, Chloe was in her chambers, but for a long time she never closed her eye. And she heard the maid said that the king was trying to kill the duke with the help of the Marquise of Isabella. But due to the fact that the Marquise failed, the king ordered to get rid of her in order to hide the conspiracy. It is also said that Prince Johannes mentally unhealthy, so the royal family is so afraid of his lordship. The duke probably knew that this case in the bud would spoil his relationship with the royal family. But nevertheless, he without hesitation came to the aid of her lordship, which seemed very romantic to the maids. After some time, Demian, reading the book, said Chloe, who approached him that he had not called her today. The girl replied that he looked exhausted, to which she received an answer, that his fatigue could not be compared with her. Then he invited her to sit down, to which he heard the question whether to bring him a little tea in order to help fall asleep. Thinking for a second, the man replied that tonight he had the mood to drink alcohol. After that, silence came, and a few minutes later, Demian asked what she was thinking so much. Looking at her husband, the Duchess uncertainly said that there is something that she should tell him tonight. The Duke irritably asked if this would be another request from his wife to return to the Verdier estate. Then he said that he was tired, asking her to come tomorrow to discuss the cause and desire of her departure. But Chloe interrupted him, said that she would like to express her deepest gratitude for his help. The Duke asked if she needed something from me, thinking that she was trying to achieve something with flattering speeches, but she just wanted to thank him for protecting her, despite the inevitable conflict. He did everything in his power to save her, even if the lie was said during the proceedings. Then she allowed her pride to cloud her own mind. Instead of trusting him, Demian asked if she was feeling an insult due to the fact that he did not reveal the identity of the guilty a little earlier. But perfectly, the Duchess realized that he could not help but take into account their relationship with the royal family. He could continue to silence further, thereby allowing her to give her death, but he did not do this. On the contrary, he made an enemy in the person of the royal family, despite the fact that he had no good reason, and for her it has a deepest meaning. But the man still did not understand what she wanted to say. Having lowered her head, Chloe explained that he showed unshakable devotion to the role of her wife, and in gratitude, she intends to fulfill her responsibilities with all her heart as his wife and Duchess. The next second, the man smiled, asked if she wanted to say that she tried half-heartedly, but the girl asked in response if she could find out why he still has not consumed their marriage. Demian replied that this was a very strange question during the expression of gratitude, but Chloe did not agree. She explained that, in the end, it was the duty of the Duchess is to fully ensure the continuation of her spouse. Frowning, the man asked if she asked the question only because of this, hearing that she did not mean another. After a few seconds, the Duke rose that he was ready to answer this question right now. He was not so low to use his power in order to obtain proximity, which shows only contempt. If this is enough to answer, then it can return to her chambers to digest this information. Why did he add that it was too late? Because she never gets tired of reminding him of this. But now his turn has come. Leaving his room, Chloe last time looked back at the closing door, after which she stopped. Only 2 weeks ago, she was completely confident in her opinion about him, but now she was tormented by doubts. He seemed cold and ruthless, and she considered him a rude, arrogant, and selfish person. He has not changed at all since their first meeting, but she feels that her resentment disappears against him. Then she began to wonder what was in it that caused such a strong hostility in her. She thought that those old feelings were completely erased, but now only doubts tormented her. The fact that she wanted to convey to him today was not her gratitude, but something completely different. Returning to his door, she thought that she had not experienced hatred for him. Demian thought about the same. Having dropped her cane, the girl rushed to his arms, deciding that he was now feeling something new. When they were in bed, Chloe said that she did not hatch him. Demian mentally replied that she was not lucky. At dawn on the day of the death of the Marquise, the man said that the royal palace would declare the war on his lordship. Demian agreed, because without a doubt, they sent the Marquise here so that she needed him intently. Weiss replied that the servant she had taken from the palace is unequivocally guilty, but there is no evidence against her. She was poisoned, but if they could receive evidence, he could use them for his benefit. He replied that if there is no evidence, they should create his own, after which he ordered the doctor to visit. It is necessary to hint at the red veil that members of the royal family tried to spy on the Duke with the help of a mistress. And as soon as she became useless, they got rid of her, in which case the king needs to answer the corresponding. Suddenly, Demian heard a basement of heels on the street, after which he noticed Chloe returning home. The man concluded that she was with that servant, then asked what he should do to make her. He asked the Lord to recall the reason for his oath of fidelity. He replied that the Duke had saved his life on the battlefield. Then he decided to ask him if a woman is able to feel in the same way, after which he decided to adjust the plan, ordering to go to the Duchess' chambers and put the bubble in her bag. The next day, the maid said that recently, the hostess often goes to various walks. She was replied that the sky today is so clear, a rarity for these edges, and it would be annoying to stay locked up. Suddenly, one of the maids stated that she was walking certainly not for the weather. The rest had reached her ears. The girl noticed that when she goes unaccompanied, she always returns in the company of his lordship. It seemed that they were very close. The other maids immediately laughed, concluding that they already had it. One of them remembered that when she first arrived, their relationship did not look promising. Not surprising, given all the rumors that went at that time, and the novel of his lordship and Marquise Isabella. Not to mention the fact that her lordship was accused of killing the Marquise, which probably influenced all this. Apparently, then they fell in love with each other when his grace saved her from his faithful death. It is romantic. However, the maid added that she was sure that everything happened long before that. Others did not quite understand her. The girls decided that she had gone crazy, but she was sure that there had been feelings between them for a long time. She is convinced that they fell in love with each other long before that event and simply hid it. Meanwhile, Chloe asked why he was so stubborn, to which she heard that he was just what he was. With a caller, the girl excitedly said that yesterday she asked him to refrain and not interfere with her picnic. Demian smiled, asking whether it occurred to her that it was from fulfilling his duties. The Duchess grinned, after which she gave a negative answer, after which she hesitated before she continued. In a restless tone, she added that she does not think that it is so necessary to try to conceive a child so often. Suddenly, the man moved towards her, asking if she was thinking that he was doing this with the goal of having a child. She was sure of this, because ensuring the birth of the heir is one of their most important duties. Demian replied that he had to clarify that he did not intend to do anything without a clear goal. She understood this. But now, all that he wants is a good time with his wife, enjoying her company. Then, he began to unfasten the shirt, saying that, regardless of their goal, the more attempts, the better. At the same moment, near them, Gilles lurked, who secretly watched the Duke and the Duchess. Hearing a strange rustle, the girl turned her head worriedly, blushing along the way and scared, looking at the bushes. She stated that someone was there. Demian replied that it did not matter, and asked her not to pay attention to it. Then he added that when she is with him, and even when not, all her attention should be directed only at him. If someone asked Chloe that she appreciates most of all in her wife, she would have froze before answering. Having asked herself this question, the girl answered aloud that perhaps his outstanding ability to plan. He always keeps her aware of his location and immediately notifies it if something happened. Margaret replied that she could not say that this is his best feature, because this example is not entirely successful. But this is all that comes to her mind. Although if you ask about his vices, she would easily name a dozen. Then the maid asked if her heart was melting at the sight of his eyes glowing with passion and the majestic camp. With an indifferent look, having sipped tea, she replied that most often his eyes resemble an icy lake. Margaret replied that he returned only 5 days later after he went to the royal palace. Waving her arms, she added that he was so hastily racing on his horse that it was connected with her lordship. Turning away, Chloe replied that, probably, he simply freed himself from his affairs earlier than expected. The maid was varying that this was not so, because he simply could not transfer separation from her, even for an instant. Usually, people call it love, and it seems that she is the only one who is not aware of this wonderful fact. The girl immediately blushed, introducing the image of Demian, who smiled, turning to her as his wife. Loosing her head, she thought that this could not be, because he was not able to experience such emotions. Suddenly, Margaret remembered that she forgot to tell Milady about the news that another maid told her. As soon as the girl finished whispering in her ear, a cup in which there was still tea slipped out of the hands of the Duchess. Ignoring the smashed cup, dumbfounded, Chloe asked for what she had just said. She was informed that Gilles decided to leave the estate, after which Chloe decided to immediately head to his house. Margaret said that he decided to leave, even despite the assurances of his lordship to close his eyes to the incident. Gilles, apparently, was embarrassed to stay here. She was told that he would leave the Tisa train the same evening. It looked like he was in a hurry, and in a hurry, the girl wondered why he would leave so suddenly. Without slowing down, she mentally asked him what was happening, because she did not want him to leave her now. At the same time, the Duke, who was the first to arrive at Gilles' house, asked the guy why he was still here. After all, he made it clear that after the end of the trial, he had to immediately disappear and return home. With an uncertain tone, the guy replied that there was something that he had to see, but now everything is in order. When asked, what exactly, Gilles replied that he should be sure that he would not harm Chloe. Suddenly, the man laughed, after which he got up from his place, slowly heading for the surprised interlocutor. Putting his hands on his shoulders, the Duke said that he was very arrogant, and in fact, he did not know his place. But at the same moment, Demian's face was angry, after which he quite hit the guy's fist on his face. Having fallen, Gilles cleared his throat while the embittered Duke approached him, saying that intuition did not fail him. About seeing him for the first time, he experienced a strong feeling of disgust when he was too close to Chloe. His gaze, behavior, manner of speech, all this annoyed him, but all this time he tried to control himself. The man grabbed the guy by the breasts, after which he lifted. They say that this guy decided to get into his own business. Suddenly, Demian shuddered, hearing behind him a familiar female voice, who loudly asked him to stop. He turned into his head. He noticed Chloe, who literally begged him to let him go, but he was in no hurry to do this. Then he shook Gilles more strongly, asking if he achieved this to rush to the Duchess and sympathize. Taking him closer, the Duke suggested that he was hoping to spend the last secret date with his wife. Having thrown off the cane, the girl ran to them, but Demian menacingly ordered her to move aside until she was injured. Chloe grabbed his hand. I seek that he let go of Gilles, when she suddenly froze, looking into his face. Frowning, the man turned his head in his direction, asking not to feel her patience and move aside. Meanwhile, Gilles decided to take advantage of the moment to hit the Duke into the leg, breaking out of his grip. Then the guy said that he had no right to speak with my lady in such a tone, and she would not tolerate insults. Even more angry, Demian replied that, judging by the reckless chatter, he did not appreciate his life at all. At that very moment, Chloe fell to her knees in front of her husband, closing Gilles, whom she wanted to protect. Her whole body trembled, but she was not going to retreat, continuing to ask him to stop and not to do it. The man frowned, listening to how Chloe said that he helped her, and also testified in court to save. Being unable to lie, he still did this to the Lord God for the sake of her, not taking care of himself. Demian said that his peeping behind their intimate life was not a lie, but she was sure that this was not so. The Duke decided to try to convince her, asking if she remembers their picnic in a birch forest. The girl immediately froze. The man, in addition, asked her to do if she recognized the personality of a servant who was following them at that moment, and then she would continue to defend him. Chloe could not believe that it really could be true. She did not want to believe, but decided to personally ask Elise whether he was. The guy began to stutter in response. Grinkling, the Duke said that this time he could no longer hide behind the mask of devotion to the mistress. All his intentions were too obvious to him, because the young men like him so eager for others. Worshipping, they always seek love that will bring only suffering, but these desires were too vicious. Gilas was supposed to be well aware of this before thinking about this or doing something like that. He dreams of love, which is not destined to happen. After these words, Demian slowly held out his hand to his wife. When she answered him and pressed her face to her chest, the man added that Chloe von Tisa was already belonging to him. Then he invited her to leave, and they headed for the exit, and Gilas said that he was vicious to the core. With tears in his eyes, he added that the Duke is the very embodiment of the devil, but the girl did not even stop. When they returned to the estate, Chloe bowed her head and told Demian that she vowed to be a faithful wife. Gilles is not more for her than a good friend. Although he did not incorrectly, this is not a reason for his expulsion. Moreover, he is a very capable servant, and it was thanks to his efforts that they were able to survive this harsh winter. The man asked not to speak, as if filled with deep respect for him, because of the performance of his work. Having wilted, Chloe asked what then he wanted from her in return for Gilles not to be expelled from the Birch Castle. Not hearing the answer, she turned her head away, asking him to immediately leave her for a while. Before she begins to despise him even more, he had to leave her alone with himself, so that it did not get worse. When the Duke came out, Chloe tightened her knees under her, asking himself why he was so unbearably self-propelled. Suddenly, she remembered the words of Margaret, who said with tears in her eyes that people call it love. However, now the girl was ready to refute these words, since people do not behave like that before those whom they love. Then she plopped down on the bed, trying to understand what else she expected. From a person with a similar character, the Duke is not able to love anyone for real, and now she felt like a real fool. That same night, a man entered her room, approaching her bed, after which he took a strand of her hair. Then he said that he decided to leave her alone, trying to preserve the remnants of respect for her. As for the Duchess, then he whispered in her ear that he wanted to say that today she slightly upset him with her behavior. He advised in the future not to take the side of another man if he does not want troubles for himself and for him. This very much spoiled his mood, and however, now he wishes her good night, after which Demian kissed her. When he came out, Chloe opened his eyes, feeling her heart pounding, and she asked herself what it was. A couple of days later, the Duchess looked at a razor set in surprise, guessing what was required of her. She said that she was not aware that in the absence of an assistant in her task, she was included in the performance of his duties. Demian replied with a smile that his servant had a strong cough, and today he could not start his work. Having lowered her head, the girl said that one day without shaving would not have a negative impact on his impeccable appearance. The Duke was surprised by such words what was written on his face, but he was not going to retreat so simply. The man replied that quite a lot of time had passed since he had heard this to climb from anyone. But the next second, he leaned back in his chair, said that he was hungry, and it was better for her to hurry with shaving. Understanding her hopeless position, the girl put foam on his face, after which she picked up a sharp blade. Demian said that she did well, but the Duchess asked him to refrain from talking. He decided to listen to her, after which his gaze rushed up, watching the expression with which his wife was working. The Duke said that there was nothing that she could not cope with. She replied that she finally ruined everything. The man replied that this was fine, because he loves when she could not cope with something. Chloe froze from these words. Frowning, the girl said that she did not like to be confused, but this did not worry Demian. He always insisted that she perfectly fulfill her duties, both wife and Duchess. But now he says that she prefers her mistakes, and now she could not understand what exactly he wants from her. Touching her cheeks, he replied that he wants to see how her perfect eye breaks up to pieces only in front of him. He wants her to be worried about his every action, even made stupid mistakes, and longed for his arms. Surviving a little, Chloe asked for permission to ask. The man was immediately interested in what exactly. Chloe asked with an uncertain tone whether he loves her, thereby not in the joke of the Duke, who did not expect such a question. Approaching him, she politely asked sincerely to answer her, so that henceforth she did not doubt his feelings. Turning to her, Demian asked, Is this not what she wants him to whisper her in the ear of love? She replied that if his malicious actions were dictated by love for her, then she would try to forgive him. Rising from his seat, the man replied that he was sorry that he had disappointed her, but he did not need her forgiveness. Then the Duchess said that if she could not forgive, then she would not be able to love either. This again surprised the Duke. He asked what she wanted to say, but Chloe turned her head, asking to start answering her question. She was ready to accept any answer, but everything that she asks is to be honest with her and only tell the truth. From shock, the man first did not find what to answer, after which he touched her hand and then stroked her cheek. He said that from the moment when he first saw her, he wanted to take possession of her and keep it tightly in his arms. And if the desire to make it can be called love, then he is madly in love with her for a very long time. With the most serious look, Demian added that he would say 1,000, no, 10,000 times, about the fact that he loves her madly. After a small pause, Chloe replied that now everything would be fine, but the man did not understand what she had in mind. Blinding and smiling, the Duchess added that she did not mind if he would see her in an unsightly form. The severity of the man immediately gave way to another surprise, because he expected from her any words except these. Approaching her and pulling him to himself, Demian said that the prospect of this is very exciting him. All that he created to turn it into Chloe von Tissa, with the advent of spring, was washed off with meltwater. In the moments of the consciousness of his true feelings that she could not call love, her heart began to thaw. Meanwhile, Gilles expected his train at the station when he suddenly heard the question whether he was a servant from Tissa's house. The guy immediately recognized the smiling man. It was Lord Weiss, who was very glad that he remembered him. Having jumped from his place, Gilles began to bow, welcoming milord. Hearing the question of where he was going, the guy replied that he decided to leave Tissa's house to go to new enterprises after sad events. The smile immediately evaporated from the lord's face, replacing his sadness when he replied that he was sorry to hear it. And yet, given that he rendered his lordship and service, he had to send him with a letter of recommendation. He was sure that the Duke was deeply grateful to him for great help, and there is no doubt about it. In the end, he has been in love with the Duchess for a very long time, and absolutely everyone knew about it, watching him, and he played an important role in the salvation of her life. Hearing these words, Gilles immediately froze with a surprised look. He did not assume that the gentleman loves her for so long. Weiss replied that he had a kind of way of self-expression. The guy said that they got married in such a hurry, because of which he decided that this marriage was committed not for love. The Lord replied that the Duke is not one of those who are doing such important deeds as marriage so impulsively and sharply. Probably, he was about the year or maybe 2 planned this marriage, although he did not tell anyone about it. As a friend, the Lord asked if he did not receive a letter from the Duke of Tissa, then what he thinks about working in the monastery. His mother is now there and says that recently he categorically lacks working hands. This could be a consolation for him, but Gilles thought that this person may confirm his suspicions. The guy thanked him, when suddenly Weiss noticed that his intonation had changed, and it seemed that something was wrong. Gilles said that it was difficult for him to understand why the Duke accused Chloe of murder, undergoing such suffering. Therefore, he plans to avoid work anywhere connected with him. Hearing this, Lord shuddered noticeably. The man immediately asked how he found out about this, while the guy concluded that his fears were not heeded. Cleaning his hands tightly into his fists, the guy replied that this was just a serious suspicion of him, but he just confirmed his truthfulness, and now he was interested in what he intended to do with Chloe. At that very moment, the guy changed his decision. Ask Greta if his proposal is still really his proposal. Weiss realized that he fell directly into his trap, and if the Duke of Tissa finds out about it, the troubles cannot be avoided. Given that this young man knows the truth about the events of that night, now he is a great danger. It would be reasonable not to lose sight of him in order to be able to look after him and his actions. He was obliged to keep him beside himself, so excitedly replied that the proposal was still in force. Handing his hand, the Lord asked if he would go with him, in response to which he received a low bow and consent. Meanwhile, Chloe was walking around the city, carrying a sealed envelope in her hand. Being in a raised mood, for the first time in a long time, she wrote to her father, Also, letters from the Southern Post Office came to her not so long ago. Therefore, she sent one in there, even though she had no exact address. But she really hoped that Alice would receive him. Now she understands that Tissa is a place of unprecedented beauty. With the advent of spring, everything is felt completely different. When she first came here, the winter was endless, and she did not think that she could love this place. Now she feels here as comfortable as in Verdier, which gave her confidence and mood. Suddenly, Demian approached her, acquiring, and with a smile asking how his dear wife went to the day. The girl remembered that he said that he would be busy, but he replied that he finished the meeting as early as possible. Then he added that he could not allow the work to detain him for a long time when his wife was walking in complete solitude. Suddenly, he laughed, noticing that her face blushed. Embarrassed, Chloe replied that today it was just hot. At that very moment, the Duke drew attention to the envelope in her hands, asking what she had there. Because of something shuddered. Hiding abruptly behind him, she replied that nothing special, but the man firmly stated that she was cunning. Smiling nervously, the Duchess assured him that there was nothing important, thinking that she could not allow him to see this. She remembered how she visited the mail, where the man offered her lordship to look at the remaining stamps. These are brands dedicated to their victory in the war of 2 years ago. At that time, they were popular and quickly sold out. Chloe noticed Mark with Demian, while the seller said that it happened that this was the last remaining set. Then, he asked if she was interested in his acquisition. Then the girl seriously thought about buying. She told Demian that it was brands with the image of strawberries, and they seemed very charming to her. The stamps were created in honor of the celebration of the summer solstice, and it has interest in such things. The Duke was surprised that she hides stamps with strawberries, while the girl tried to convince him that it was by no means. Suddenly, the man pulled out the envelope from her hands, waiting for his wife to finally relax, guessing the moment. Then he began to reveal it, saying that he himself was a great lover of strawberries, and Chloe immediately blushed. He asked with a smile on his face how he could suppress his curiosity when she behaves in this way. Suddenly, Demian released the envelope from his hands, and because of which, he flew towards the fountain, dumbfounding a couple. Noticing in his portrait, the man was surprised, asking how much this face began to remind her of strawberries. Then he laughed, adding that she directly exudes disappointment, because he could buy more if she wishes. Lying, Chloe replied that it was completely natural to feel disappointment after the loss of what she had just bought. Then the Duke suggested catching them for her, but the girl also protested for her, answering that it was already too late. However, the man did not listen to her, starting to undress, and listening that she was practically forced to buy them. But at the same moment, she fell silent, staring at her husband, who had already climbed into the fountain. Pulling out the brand with his photo, he replied with a smile that there was no need to raise such a noise. The embarrassed Chloe pulled on her hat, saying that he was wet through, and besides, people are looking at them now. Demian replied that despite the fact that they sees every day, his wife bought stamps with his image. This is less than he can do for her in return, and he will be glad to see a smile on her face, and not an expression of loss. Suddenly, he approached her, taking off his hat, and saying that his thought crept in, and there is a suitable place. The Duke pointed to the hotel building nearby, asked if they can relax a little there after this adventure. The heart of the Duchess immediately stabbed while she thought that she was answering, because she did not expect such a proposal. When they entered the building and occupied a table in a cafe, Chloe sat reddened, drunk with hot tea. She did not expect a cafe on the ground floor of the hotel. Demian thoughtfully asked if she hoped for another. The girl immediately flared up, answering negatively, but in her expression, the Duke thought completely differently. The Duchess said that her walk was far from accidental, and she needed to send an urgent telegram. The man was surprised, after which his face immediately became serious when he asked if she heard the news. Chloe did not understand what was being discussed, but at the same moment the man moved towards her, saying that this concerns her father. Then he asked if she remembered the forest in which they first met, which he asked for as a dowry. I am sure that a gold mine was discovered there, as a result of which, Verdier's castle arrives in a festive mood. However, after their wedding, the forest began to belong to him, so Verdier's house will not receive any benefit from the mine. Nevertheless, Viscount did not even say this. His excessive modesty only harms his person. Having lowered her head, the girl replied that her father was not one of those people who would be saddened because of this. Suddenly, Demian said that in the telegram that he sent, it is said about the transfer of 50% of the shares of the Viscount Rudnick. Then he added that she was very ambitious. Chloe immediately began to thank him. The Duke asked him to give him a piece of this cake with a half spoon of cream and half a spoon of chocolate. Without thinking twice, Chloe immediately fulfilled his wish, after which she began to feed her husband from her hands. He replied that it was delicious as always, his special dish, which he often loves to enjoy in this place. In his opinion, this is the only right way to enjoy the cake, although Mother could not stand it. Suddenly, he froze, looking at his wife in surprise, asking why she was crying, but the girl was silent. Then she began to wipe her tears, answering that she was not sure. Damian said that she was now quite stupid. He asked to approach and let her look at her face, but Chloe refused, since he would mock her. However, he really wanted this, after which, with care in his voice, he again asked what the cause of her tears was. Smiling, the Duchess replied that she was tears of sincere delight, because she did not expect such an act. The man's face immediately froze in surprise, because it was that rare moment when Chloe sincerely expressed emotions. Then he gently kissed her hand, saying that he thought that these words were intended only for their bedroom. But now he is curious how she would react. He gave her a whole mind to her father. Chloe blushed again. She didn't mean this, but in any case, it is incredibly grateful, and does not know if he can thank him. When they left the hotel, Chloe asked if he wanted something else while they were on a walk. Suddenly, Demian stopped, saying that he had found something that he liked much more, her sweet flattery. At that very moment, the Duchess approached him, asking if he had ever heard the legend of this bridge. She explained that the lovers who divided the kiss on this bridge will never be separated, and they will always be together. After a couple of days, they visited Svan, and in the evening, Chloe first hit the performance of Julian Witta. Weiss said that his lordship is not without reason his patron, and then asked if she loved music. The girl answered in the affirmative, adding that she very often played the piano when she lived in Verdier. Demian asked the lord to stop pestering his wife. He replied that he was trying to help her relax. The man, heading in their direction, with a smile, heard the question of what he took, that she needed it now. Suddenly, he said, saying that he and Cousin had not seen each other for a long time. Turning around, the girl noticed the prince. Chloe was immediately blown up, nervously saying that she nourishes the hope that he was in good health. He looked at her. The girl made a curtsy, relying on a cane, but nevertheless she was able to greet him, as the etiquette demands. He brought belated congratulations on the wedding, to which he received an answer that she was touched by receiving his letter. Suddenly, Demian said that if she ended with a greeting, it could sit down, because her legs were tired. The girl was surprised by his behavior, because of which she was worried, while Johannes was also in shock. He said that Demiana was almost not recognized, and apparently he is completely transformed from the moment of marriage. Laughing, the prince added that she could not have imagined that he would become so loving and faithful spouse. But then he declared a cold tone that, as far as he remembers, he was not close to that when he knew with the Marquise. Demian replied that marriage is able to change everything beyond recognition, and it is not easy to understand such a bachelor like him. Johannes replied that he was forcing him to envy, asking him to enter the palace more often in order to enlighten him. Then he asked why they should not send the Duchess to the palace, because they were just about to choose a maid of honor. Chloe noticed how everyone was tense in the Prince of the Prince, feeling that a remarkable voltage was hanging in the air. But at the same moment, the Duke abruptly jumped up from his place, approaching the cousin, but he began to wave his hands. He said that this is just a joke, because he would never have acted in this way with him and his wife. Then he put his hand on his shoulder to the Duke, with a smile said that he was his dearest cousin and the most devoted servant. In response to this, Demian viciously asked that he, the hell, was carrying, after which a grave silence came. The prince wanted to answer something, but the Duke advised him to keep his mouth behind his teeth until he turned his neck. At the same moment, Johannes grimaced his teeth, barely restraining himself, asking how he dares to speak like that. The next second, the Duke smiled, saying that it was how to joke, after which he patted the cousin on the shoulder. When the performance ended, Demian lit a cigar, telling Weiss that he had sent his wife to the station. The Lord immediately replied that he had also seen the killers in the theater. There were 3 of them, and they were sent by the royal family. The Duke concluded that this is a sign of despair. Because of the current appearance of the prince in public, there was some purpose. It was not so difficult to guess his intentions, and it seems that he longed to personally show him how he blooms and smells. They say that the king's health was very shaken, so apparently, Johannes is now very excited. Weiss asked if he plans, but for some time, to stay in the Castle of Roses to wait out the attack. But the Duke answered negatively, explaining that he would immediately return to the Birch Castle in Tees. The Lord asked if it was better to stay in Svena and monitor the situation if there is no need to return. Put on gloves. Demian replied that taking into account how the prince behaved today, he cannot stay here. Suddenly, he stated that the summer festival would soon begin in Tisa. This news introduced the Lord to be confused. The Duke explained that his wife would choose the best strawberries at the festival and therefore should be there. Weiss immediately began to nod, after which he froze, in bewilderment, asking what kind of strawberries are talking about. Meanwhile, Chloe sat alone on the bench, waiting for her husband, who was already late for her. Previously, he told her to go forward and wait for him at the station, and if he does not have time, she must go without him. Today's situation seemed tense. Due to the case with the Marquis, relations with the royal family deteriorated. Perhaps she should stay with him. When suddenly the employee approached her, asking if the Duke arrived. The girl with a guilty look apologized, explaining that he assured her that she would definitely arrive on time. The sun was almost going beyond the horizon when Chloe heard a familiar voice and the question of what she was doing here. Demian, breathing heavily, wanted to find out why she did not leave, because he clearly told her to go alone. She replied that she was waiting for him, and to the question where the train was, she stated that she had left a long time ago, and she decided not to go. Chloe could not cause so much inconvenience to other passengers, only because of him, although it was her privilege. He asked what she was thinking about, remaining to wait here alone in the deep crown, subjecting herself to various dangers. Rising from her seat, the Duchess replied that she was waiting for him because she was worried all this time. After all, she is not so heartless as to throw her husband after such an unpleasant meeting with the prince. The man was dumbfounded by her answer, which was why he took a few seconds to say something. He then stated that the last train in Tees had already left, but soon the train to Verdier would arrive, and now it's too late. And since they are unlikely to return this evening in Tees, he suggested first to call on her home. Demian himself thought that he was worried because she was completely alone in a deep topic and mentally apologized. Meanwhile, Chloe thought that even if he seemed unable to openly express his feelings, but she fell in love with his unique manner of manifestations of feelings, and now she was very glad that they met. The next second, the girl rushed to his arms, answering with a smile that she would gladly go home. As soon as they occupied the train compartment, they were immediately seized with passion, because of which they could not tear themselves away from each other. It was precisely when the purpose of his life was a step away from him. He sits on the train with the intention of winning her heart. Kissing her, Demian said that she should know how much he loves her, and will always love her. Looking at him, the reddened girl replied that sometimes he could be amazingly tender. The man thought that she had no need to know all the dirty details of this love. After visiting Verdier, Viscount wrote a letter, asking how her return to the Tisa estate took place. He could not restrain the tears of joy at the sight of her, sitting in the crew with his husband. Her unexpected visit and a happy look gave him a feeling as if he had been presented with a delightful gift. He also asked her not to be surprised, as her fragmented younger sister sent a portrait with the child. He has the feeling that there will be very little time before they get together as a family. He heard that the festival of solstice would take place in Tees, and it would be good to see the holiday every day. With undisguised hope, he trusts that she will fully enjoy her current happiness. When they were at home, Demian again decided to have fun with his wife a little, but she pushed him away. The reddened Chloe said that his mother could appear at any time, and they should stop. The Duke replied that she was enjoying when he is going crazy about her, but they really do not have time for this. Demian decided to try again, when his mother came into the room, asking Chloe why she was preparing for so long. At that very moment, before her eyes, Her son was lying on horseback on an embarrassed girl who tried to push him away. The man greeted her, said that he needed moral support before the race. The woman replied that Chloe's efforts would not be in vain this morning. Demian replied that she would not disappoint her. Chloe was embarrassed even more, turning away from them, and thought that witch mother, such and her son, was not a drop of shame. A little later, being on a walk, the woman asked the Duchess if she liked the strawberries. Chloe replied that she was embarrassed, and she was extremely uncomfortable to be in front of such a huge crowd. Mother said that she would never have thought, given the zeal that she demonstrated. The girl smiled, answering that she was her duty as a duchess, after which they both looked at Demian. The woman asked if she was surprised. After thinking, Chloe replied that he was very easily dressed to participate in the race. Suddenly, a signal sounded, meaning the beginning of the race, after which several men rushed forward. At that very moment, the woman asked, "Difficult or Demian man?" because he was ambitious from an early age. Their father always said that a note of ambition is the key to success, and it will always help to achieve results. In the case of Demian, perhaps he is too much, but thanks to this, he is now revered by everyone. When he was still a young man, she tried to become a role model for him, so that he formed his character. This was done with the only intention to develop a sense of devotion to the royal family. However, the children are unlikely to grow up as their parents wish, and it will be terrible if the king will die. Then the prince's reputation will fall to the bottom. A very serious change will be prepared to Demian. At that very moment, she looked in surprise at Chloe, who strictly asked if she wanted to tell her something. The woman thought that perhaps she was different, and no one is able to change Demian, but she has a chance. Suddenly, the judge shouted loudly that the Duke became the winner, after which applause burst out everywhere. Without wasting time, Mother said that she has only one request, not becoming a weakness of Demian. At that very moment, the man saw his wife among the guests, after which he smiled, swinging his hand along the way. Toward evening, Demian asked Chloe whether the festival came to her liking. She answered in the affirmative. He also did not forget to ask how she spent time with his mother, worrying that omissions could arise. Having a slightly lowered gaze, the Duchess replied that she loves him very much, but she did not say anything more specific. Continuing to go hand in hand, the man said that it was precisely because of fear that she sometimes makes such mistakes. Even if Mother is not kind with her, he hopes that she will treat this with understanding and without aggression. Suddenly, Chloe asked if he ever experienced fear. Such a question made the Duke freeze in a stupor. He replied that he would never dare to admit it, even if there would be a matter of seconds to death. Touching her hair, he added that he would prefer to die, laughing than to stay in memory with a miserable coward. After all, it was then she will never forget him, because she will know that her husband lived without fear and died without fear. While they were walking, it watched this, as the girls tore flowers and rejoiced at life. Everyone around ran and danced, someone with their couple, someone alone, but everyone was joyful. Chloe said that for a long time, he was diligently practiced in walking with the help of the prosthesis presented by him. Then she sadly lowered her head, adding that one day she would give him flowers like those women. After all, she was told that during this festival it was customary so that women, walking back, tear the flowers and give them. Having put her on a bench from a log, Demian replied that he was looking forward to this because he was not given flowers. The Duchess said that the point was not that they did not want, and then that they could not. The man was surprised at this conclusion. Chloe thoughtfully explained that their life can be ruined if they fall out of disgrace to him. With a questioning look, the Duke asked why he would destroy the life of a woman who admitted his love. For him, it looked like some kind of stupid absurdity, after which he asked who she was taking him for. Looking at Demian, the girl asked herself who was actually this man, who became her husband. She immediately remembered their first meeting, when she was convinced that there was no one else in the world. Then, in her memory, their first kiss surfaced, similar to the waves, crashing against the cliff, but still gentle. And then she remembered his hand and heart proposal, which then seemed to her threat more. He could not even imagine how often her world turned upside down since she met him. Now she is afraid of what else can happen to her if they are together. But at the same time, it beckons. Suddenly, Demian said it was raining. after which large drops without warning began to fall from the sky. At that very moment, Chloe called the man to her, uncertainly saying that she would like to become his weapon. His mother said that she should not become his weakness, so she decided to do the opposite. The man was surprised, after which he asked with a smile if she wanted to be his weakness, but she answered negatively. While everyone was laughing and fled from the rain, the Duke asked if she was saying his intention to join him on the battlefield. Waiting for an answer, he put his hand on her head, while Chloe said that life was continuous battles. The man's eyes immediately opened when he remembered that this was what he told her during the first meeting. The girl added that he will always fight for her, which is why she intends to do everything possible, and she will begin with the fact that he will support him in everything, and also try not to become weak for him. The Duchess wanted to add something else, when suddenly Demian approached her, enclosing a passionate kiss. After that, the Duke asked to allow him to tell him that she did not become his weakness for a moment. So it was, and it will always be so. After these words, he kissed her again, thereby proving his words. At that moment, despite the rain, they were warm, because now they were warmed by the love that everyone was striving for. Looking at joyful people, Demian asked if she knew that many, born in Tis, coincide. Chloe suggested that all because their parents became beloved during the festival of the middle of summer. Rising from his seat, the man confirmed this hunch, adding that passion is sometimes very contagious. Then he held out his hand to her, telling his wife that as a married couple of the Dukes, they were obliged to set an example. A couple of minutes later, people were surprised to watch them, while the Duchess said that she was very embarrassed. When asked why, she was not sure that she had never been dancing before such a huge number of people, not to mention the fact that her dance skills clearly leave much to be desired, and everyone will make fun of her. Suddenly, the Duke picked her up in his arms, saying that no one would dare to mock her while he was nearby. Looking carefully into her eyes, the man with a smile on his face asked if she was now more comfortable. However, because of his act, Chloe was embarrassed even more, because she was not used to being in the spotlight of someone in her arms. Then he lowered it to the ground, after which they began to uncertainly circle in the dance, and Chloe often stumbled. Constantly holding it, the Duke asked if everything was fine, but the girl tried to get out quickly. At that very moment, she decided to get rid of shoes that crushed a little and prevented her from moving freely. Then she said that everything was fine, after which her movement became more confident and free. Now the girl could experience sincere joy, being next to her husband, and enjoy life. While everyone else had fun, Chloe thanked him loudly. The man asked in surprise why. Having raised her voice to be heard, the girl replied that she was grateful for inviting her to dance. In response to this, the Duke pulled her to him and hugged her, and after their body froze, his eyes carefully studied each other. Demian, from which a smile disappeared from the face that the rain is intensifying, and they would not hurt to rest a little. At that very moment, one of the servants loudly informed his lordship that the carriage was supplied and was ready to leave. Suddenly, Chloe grabbed her husband's hand, after which she said that she would like to dance further, regardless of the rain. She really wanted to continue to dance with him. The man answered in the affirmative, after which he led her along. When they were in a carriage, they were seized with passion. Demian asked her to move for him, and only for him. He could not wait for arrival at the estate, because of which he began to slowly undress his wife, from which she trembled. The charioteer who was thrown to the carriage through the impenetrable veil of the rain did not even know what was happening. When they ended up on the estate and went to bed, Demian recalled that she said that she loved him. With a smile on her face, Chloe asked when she said that, trying to reduce everything to a joke, but to no avail. The Duke replied that he had just said it, after which he put her into his arms and then fell asleep tightly. 3 months later, Chloe was in a birch castle, communicating with an elderly woman in high spirits. She did not have time to hear the answer to the question, when suddenly she was informed that His Grace had arrived, which she was delighted. When Demian came in, the girl jumped up that she needed to tell him something, but he abruptly interrupted her, with a mourning look that His Majesty King died, because of which Chloe froze in a stupor, unable to speak. The Duke added that this news is still a secret, but soon an official statement will be made. When he finished speaking, he immediately asked his wife what she wanted to say to him, but she did not find words. Instead, her elderly interlocutor jumped up from her place, who decided to help Chloe inform the joyful news. After a couple of seconds, she stated that her lordship was waiting for the child. These words made Demian stunned to freeze. Then he slowly looked towards Chloe, which squeezed the cane more strongly and touched the abdomen with his other hand. After a while, the man said that he could not believe that His Majesty decided to convey the throne of Johannes. Weiss answered him that this is certainly the Duke of Tissa causes him directly to the real bewilderment. He sincerely did not understand why he would put off the capture of the throne before the end of the period of national mourning. The details of the prince's insanity were already lit in the red veil, and the people cooled in relation to him. When asked why his lordship hesitates, the lord suggested that the duchess was expecting a child. If the duke will act hastily and make a mistake, not only his life will be dangerous. The interlocutor replied that if he was worried about the safety of her lordship, they could provide her with protection. Weiss said that he repeatedly told him about this, but his answer was constantly the same. Those who have no idea about marriage should keep their opinion to yourself. That was exactly how his answer was. This marriage was one of the many plans thought out by him to achieve the ultimate goal, the capture of the throne. Weiss agreed, and he even gave the order to get closer, the sister of the duchess, to compromise her. Although, by a happy chance, she escaped instead. But even this could not stop the duke. Initially, Weiss also thought that the duke chose such an insignificant Verdier house, and this was done so as not to attract the attention of the royal family and ensure control of the mines. He used Lady Isabella to create an image of a libertine, and he coped with this the best. Then he took a duchess with injury to his wives, and all only to avoid royal attention. The interlocutor asked if his lordship mentioned that he discovered the gold mines in Verdier during the war. At that very moment, the figure, following them, gave up a sound that forced two interlocutors to shut up abruptly. The lord immediately cried out that they could be eavesdropped, but the interlocutor replied that this was most likely a cat. Weiss replied that be that as it may, as long as they have left nothing but follow the duke's orders. The figure following them was Gilles, who in shock covered his mouth, trying to understand what he had just heard. After a while, Chloe embroidered children's socks, while Margaret joyfully stated that she had chosen a lovely color. The duchess replied that she chose something neutral, because they did not know yet whether this is a boy or a girl. The maid replied that it was confident that his lordship would be beside herself with joy, regardless of the gender of the baby. After all, this is their first child. Suddenly the girl froze, uncertainly asking if she thinks so. After all, she was not sure of this, since before Demian said that this would be her first and last pregnancy. The girl was surprised at such a statement, saying that if she does not give birth to his son, he will not have the heir. Rising from his place, the duke did not explain anything if he said that he does not like to repeat twice. Then Chloe concluded that he wants only one child. But is he really sure that there will be a boy? Margaret asked how she thinks when the duke would return from Svan, because 2 weeks had already gone. Chloe replied that now it was far from the calmest period, when suddenly someone knocked on the door of her chambers. The duchess released the butler, who bowed low, telling the madame that the visitor had arrived. A gray-haired man added that this is Lord Chelsea, the lawyer of the Tissa house. Chloe was surprised by such a guest. After 20 minutes, the girl was surprised to ask if he was sure that His Grace personally uttered these words. The guy answered in the affirmative, saying that he had written every word with its maximum accuracy that he said. The duchess read a letter where it was said that he intends to give the name of Tissa and the title of the duke to the firstborn. But then the girl clarified that this is unacceptable under the current legislation of the kingdom. Lord Chelsea agreed with her, but added that the duke always opposed the Svanov laws on inheritance. And, as of course, her lordship is known, he is one of those who always keep their word and will fulfill it in any case. Unable to restrain emotions, Chloe tightly squeezed the letter, answering that she knows very well what kind of person he was. He is able to cross the law in order to be open to the child named the Tis. Then the lord said that he also asked to deliver this letter and the necklace, which he immediately put in front of her. Having opened the letter, Chloe read that it was addressed to the expensive duchess, which means written by Demian. Then she opened the necklace, inside of which there was a small portrait of Demian and Chloe, like a memory. The letter also said that he would like the girl to begin to prepare for an early arrival in Svan. He planned to wait for the birth of their child next spring, but his longing surpasses his patience, and the Duke hopes to see her as soon as possible, since he is not able to endure such a long separation from his wife. At this moment, Demian looked at the gloves that Chloe made him and represented her, sitting in front of him. The girl herself was incredibly happy to get this letter and portrait, rejoicing that they would soon meet. Toward evening, Margaret said that the lady has been shining since she received a letter from his lordship. Chloe did not notice this, but the maid firmly clarified that she looks much more relaxed and calmer. These words warmed the soul of the Duchess, because she was really glad of an imminent meeting with Demian. She was concerned that he did not want this child, but it turned out that her fears were groundless. Margaret asked if she would accompany her if she went to the Rose Castle. She gave an affirmative answer. With enthusiasm, the maid reported that she had never left Tissa before, and now she was waiting for this. This means that she will present the opportunity to visit theatrical performances, because she wants to become an actress. Chloe replied that she could try her luck and visit the audition in Svana, if, of course, she wants to. Suddenly, Margaret said that Lily, a cook, did not notice Gilas during a vacation in one of the shops of Svan. The Duchess immediately froze when she heard this news, after which she decided to clarify whether he was still in Svana. The maid remembered that he was dressed in the cassock of the monk, but she was sure that she did not understand. And it was definitely he. He told Lily that he was working in the monastery, which is under the leadership of the mother of Count Weiss. Chloe, she knew who was talking about, because Count Weiss is none other than the closest confidant of Demian. But she was also sure that the Duke could not be those who would give Gilles a job after what happened. Like Gilles, he would not voluntarily settle in a place associated with Tissa, and Chloe did not understand how it happened. Margaret said that, in any case, they will be able to meet with Gilles as soon as they end up in Svana. The smile disappeared from Chloe's face when she thought that she had no opportunity to apologize or thank. If she will have the opportunity to see him in Svana, she will definitely tell him about everything that happened. Margaret apologized, saying that she would leave her for a short while, as she should take the papers to the office. The butler asked her to deal with them, although she still had a lot of business, including cleaning the office itself. Chloe offered her help and take the documents instead of her, but she replied that she should not be overwhelmed. Smiling, the Duchess replied that everything was in order, because this is the smallest that she could do for her husband. At night, in Demian's office, Chloe thought that he could offer a hand to find work for Gilles. After all, the guy gave her invaluable support, and Demian is not the one who remains in debt for such services. In addition, it may be surprisingly loving. Then the girl noticed a portrait of the Duke and approached him. Touching the picture, the Duchess aloud said that she was exhausted from longing for him, and now she is a little hard. Suddenly, she noticed a small piece of fabric, bulging from the bottom from the portrait. She decided to pull it for him. At that very moment, the portrait creaked and began to open. Various papers and documents were inside. Chloe was surprised that there was a secret safe, which the girl did not even guess about, and did not know what he could store. He does not give her the impression of a person who would hide something, and even more so carefully. Then the Duchess turned to make sure that no one was spying on her to study the safe a little. From boredom, she decided to look with one eye, after which she pulled out a random document from a whole stack. There were only working documents here, but she did not understand what could encourage him to hide them in this way. Suddenly she froze, noticing Verdier's card in front of her, and a letter was applied to the map. It indicated that after studying the sample, it was found that the detected mineral is gold. It is very likely that its source is a spring on the Verdier estate, and the Viscount is on the verge of ruin. If his second daughter cannot find a suitable batch, Verdier's castle will be lost due to huge debts. This letter is already 3 years old, because of which Chloe has a lot of questions, in particular to her husband. Then she found a letter with a response to his request regarding his eldest daughter, that is, about Chloe herself. She is skillful in medicine and excellently leads the servant, but she has long abandoned the idea of getting married. Realizing that the Duke so carefully and for a long time sniffed the information, Chloe from shock dropped all the documents. When lightning flashed, at that moment the girl heard a familiar voice that turned to her. In her direction, a man slowly walked under the peals of thunder, saying that he had already searched for her throughout the estate. Demian was wet from head to toe, and his face remained severe and cold when he looked at her. Chloe had tears, while the man said that he had sat on the last train to see her face as soon as possible. The Duchess did not listen to him, since her thoughts were completely mixed up in the head from the information found. However, the Duke said that if she has questions, he is ready to answer each of them in all the details. Trying to restrain tears, Chloe somehow replied that she did not want to think about anything at the moment. Demian asked her to ask questions, asking what all these documents mean and why he did it. In response to this, the girl bit her lip, and after a pause, she replied that she would ask. Since he was so insisting, she began with the fact that through tears, she asked if the murder of the Marquis of Isabella was also part of his plan. Having lowered his head, Demian thought before answering that he was far from alone to be involved in her death. Following this, another question came from the Duchess if he was to those who put her guilty of what happened. The man answered in the affirmative, after which he added that he did it only because he loves her very much. He longed for her heart, so he stole him. Such a statement caused horror on Chloe's face, and even more tears. Demian asked to keep a grudge against him. If her desire, she could scream and beat, because he will endure everything. Touching her lips, he explained that they were married, and disagreements are a natural part of marital life. He asked not to allow his emotions to overshadow the unshakable truth. Chloe asked what it is. She decided to answer herself that on the day of their first meeting, his attention attracted the brilliance of gold, not her. That he just intended to use her father, who repeatedly bowed his head in gratitude, or that a person who claimed that he believes in her innocence allowed her to appear before the court in the chilling room. And this man was some other than her spouse, and he should not have done this if he really loves. Demian replied that all this does not matter, because the truth that he spoke is different. In his eyes, the truth is such that he was in love with her, and having heard this, Chloe was shocked by his words. Looking carefully into his eyes through tears, the girl asked if he was the one who killed His Majesty. Demian answered in the affirmative, explaining that he was attended by his constant excuses for his crazy son. He could not look at how this person would soon rule the country as a sovereign. If he had such a mediocre son, he would personally bless him in order to at least keep his honor like that. The Duke sincerely believed that to die more honorable than to live in a shame, subjected to constant mockery. Suddenly, Chloe retreated from him, loudly ordering him to shut up, since she does not want to listen to such speeches. Demian did not expect such a reaction, as he tried to explain everything calmly and accessibly, not turning to a scream. But at that very moment, he noticed that Chloe's expression had changed. She felt ill, and the condition worsens. When the girl began to fall, he managed to catch her, noting that blood flowed through her feet for a long time. After a while, he was informed that the child was intact, but it is desirable that her lordship would spend it all. All this time, the man did not leave the girl's bed, wanting to be near if she suddenly needs something. When she woke up, she first called Demian, who did not leave her bed. She said that he must have urgent affairs in Svana, which I need to do immediately. He replied that there was no such task for which he would abandon his sick wife, but she wanted to be alone. Without turning his head in his direction, she literally begged him to leave, not wanting to be in his company. She again ordered him to go away if he did not want this bed to be stained with blood again. Demian replied that not so long ago it became obvious that this pregnancy negatively affects her health. Of the same time, he does not find joy in the life growing inside her. The girl was nervous again. When he left, Chloe thought that everything happened in accordance with his plan, and his calculation knew no boundaries. He must have completely realized what she was ready to go for the sake of people dear to her for her heart, and he was well aware that she was able to do everything in her power for the sake of them and their happiness. Standing outside the door, Demian heard his wife out of the baby, saying that she would definitely protect him. She promised the baby that she would protect him, whatever she should, and she would not allow anyone to harm him.